I'm in trouble again. Oh, I remember, I barely managed to defeat Shukaku, but at what cost? The last thing I remember was him grabbing me with his fucking sand that smelled like blood. It was just unbearable to feel yourself being squeezed by a substance that had torn apart so many people. I'd never felt such pain before. I was squeezed, though not completely, but my whole right side and arm were shattered to pieces. It was like being squeezed like a press, my bones crumbling and my body turning to mush. It was physical pain from hell. I was lucky to be alive, the others were completely crushed. I must be dying. But I'm glad I was able to save some people from that crazy Biju. Now I'll die knowing that I was useful to someone. I'm only 13 years old, and I haven't done, learned, or felt so much. Though I kinda got pulled in somewhere, or not. XO. I'm confused, I have a headache, it hurts to think. What am I gonna do, get sucked into this darkness? I'm alone again. Or am I? Kyuubi must be somewhere. I have to find him in this darkness. Kyuubi. End of Naruto's paw. Suddenly the darkness in front of Naruto parted and he saw a huge cage. There were pipes stretching all around the room and the floor was drowned in icy water, the coldness of it biting into his body, making him stiffen. There seemed to be nothing behind the large bars on the other side, but the blonde knew there had to be a fox in there. It was the same fox that had caused him so much pain, so much despair, but it had also saved Naruto so many times, so it gave the blonde mixed feelings. Hey, fox, Uzumaki called out confidently, trying to view the darkness like an X-ray. Movement was heard behind the cage, and soon Naruto saw behind it the one who had ruined his life, though not on purpose. You're always getting into something. You're on the verge of death. Do you realize that if you die, I die too? The only reason you're alive right now is because I'm trying to heal your wounds by channeling massive amounts of chakra through you. Kyuubi was pissed off that the little brat was picking opponents stronger than him, and then trying to grasp at his own mortal existence while he was dying. Well, thanks for keeping me alive. Naruto said, scratching the back of his head with his hand. Wait, why do I have an arm and the rest of my body here? The blonde man's stupidity was off the charts. You're a complete asshole. I won't be able to support you for long. If you don't get help, you'll die soon, and I'll die with you. This is your subconscious, that's why you have all your body parts here. You can change it any way you want, if you tweak your atrophied brain. The fox was furious, as he always was, but now because of the blonde's stupidity, he mentally asked fate many times why he was sealed in this goon. So, I can change everything here as I want. The blonde man asked her asserted. Suddenly the environment changed. The water was gone, the pipes were gone, the lighting was better, a pleasant warmth that warmed his body went through his subconscious, and instead of the floor, Kyuubi had a lot of large cushions, on which it was very comfortable to sit and lie. The fox opened his mouth in surprise and stared at the jailer with big eyes, pondering the reason for such an act. No need for gratitude, if we are to die, at least we will die in comfort, said the boy with a smile, sitting down on a beautiful throne. And you wanted a thank you from me. Kyuubi smirked. I'm already saving your life, so thanking me is out of the question. Kyuubi said as he cut him off. Okay. What now? Naruto asked a troubling question. Someone is trying to cure you. I can tell you for sure he's not from Konoha, Kyuubi said, getting more comfortable on the soft cushions. Who could it be? It's all the same for now, though, as long as I don't have to die. Uzumaki cheered up and stared at the fox's relieved face. What's going to happen to me now? I've almost completely lost the right side of my body, Naruto whispered, his voice hoarse with pain. How will I fulfill my dream? How will I be recognized? No one will want me now. The blonde couldn't take it anymore and cried, tears dripping hot drops directly onto the floor, making an annoying sound in the room. Naruto, stop it. What happened to you? Quickly pull yourself together. You're not dead, and that's all that matters at this point. You're a shinobi, not a snot-nosed infant. For some reason, the fox felt sorry for his jailer and wanted to cheer him up. It worked. Naruto sat up and wiped his tears with his sleeve, and then sincerely, looking into the fox's eyes said. Thank you. You're a good friend. Kyuubi looked at the blond boy with blue eyes and his soul grew warm, and a sad smile appeared on his face. "Thank you, Naruto," was the last thing the boy heard before he opened his aching eyes. "Welcome, young shinobi," said a gray-haired old man with a Sharingan in his left eye, the other one not visible because the old man had long, unruly hair covering the right side of his face. He was dressed in a plain black-colored cape, and in his hands was a battle scythe. His entire appearance gave the illusion that the god of death himself was in front of them. "What? Who? Where?" said Naruto, who was at first frightened of the man standing in front of him, but then calmed down as he remembered that the fox had told him that he would survive. Hearing the questions, the old man said, "Don't say anything, you came to your senses too soon, even your eyes haven't fully recovered. So calm down and try to sleep." "Who are you, what eyes?" Naruto ignored the old man, trying to focus, but apparently it was a bad idea. First of all, his eyes began to hurt and tears began to flow profusely from them, and secondly, as he tried to wipe away the tears with his right hand, he felt an even worse pain in that spot and froze in a mute scream. "I told you, you need to calm down, otherwise there will be bad consequences for you and your body," said the old man, but Naruto did not hear him. Everything swam in front of his eyes and the tears wouldn't stop, he felt himself slowly sinking into oblivion. When Naruto woke up, he didn't feel the rubber in his eyes, but his side still hurt. The blonde turned his head to where his right side was and was at a loss for words. His side was intact, but there was an almost imperceptible cut running down the middle of his body. It felt as if his flesh had been ripped from him and something else had been sewn on. There was no arm at all, but the right side of his body was definitely larger than the left, so it interested Naruto and he began to examine himself from different angles. "What? You can't get enough of yourself." A voice distracted him from looking at his body. "Who are you? And what have you done to me? Where am I?" Naruto went on the attack. He wanted to know everything, to build up a normal understanding of what was happening in his head. Just waking up and so many questions. "I'm happy to talk to you, but it seems that I'll get tired of talking to you," as if he missed everything the blonde said on purpose. "Old man, speak to the point. I want answers to my questions now, and then I'll just talk to you if you want me to." Naruto decided to leave the formalities behind and get to the point. "Okay, young man, I'll answer the questions you asked me. I saved you from imminent death because I realized you were a shinobi with a nine-tailed fox demon sealed inside you. I also thought of keeping you alive, so I decided to patch you up and make you my successor, since, as you can see, I'm already old." "Patched up? You call that fixing me up? Look at me. I have no right arm and I wonder why my eyes hurt so much, even though they didn't get hurt during my battle." Naruto was furious, but he quickly calmed down and listened. And the old man continued. "Well, patch up doesn't sound complete. I have, in place of your torn right side, implanted you with Senju Hashirama or first Hokage cells. Your body will be fully formed soon, and everything will be fine," the old man continued, but he was interrupted by Uzumaki. "Wait, why the cells of the first Hokage and where did you get them from?" Naruto began to ask. "Well, first of all, they're best suited for implanting into another body. Secondly, you'll be able to use the wood element and the rest of Hashirama's abilities, but a little weaker than him. Thirdly, with this body you won't have human needs like food, water and so on." "Wow, I didn't realize Senju Hashirama was so unique," Naruto marveled. "Well, these are modified cells, and if I implanted his real cells into you, they would just consume you and you'd die. These cells adapt to the host's body, amplifying it several times." "I see. I hadn't thought of that. What about my eyes?" Naruto thought there was nothing to be surprised about after what he'd said, but he was wrong. "I implanted a Sharingan in you, not new eyes, just a Sharingan in them. I'll teach you how to use it later." The old man surprised Naruto greatly again. "But Kakashi-sensei also had a Sharingan implanted in his eyes, and it's always activated, but I don't seem to have one," Naruto asked, rubbing his eyes in bewilderment. "It's just that I implanted it in you a little differently, but let's not go into details, you're not likely to understand my explanation," the old man replied, rubbing his gray eyebrows tiredly. Where am I, exactly? Naruto continued to ask questions. You're in my hideout. I don't know how you got here. It's possible that when Kyuubi's chakra flowed, a rift appeared and you showed up here, the elder said, and Naruto looked around the shelter. He was lying on a bed in the middle of this shelter. Not far from him was something that looked like a throne, and behind him was a statue that had no face. It was half submerged in the ground, and 4 arms were visible above the surface. There were also offshoots from the body of the statue that looked like wires that were connected to the elder. What is this wire and what is it attached to you for? Naruto asked. And this is specially to pump out chakra from this Mazo, that is, it is one of the most powerful calls, but now he is not alive, answered the old man. And who are you? Naruto decided to ask one last question. Didn't anyone ever tell you that it's rude to ask a person's name without giving your own? The old man changed the subject. I am Uzumaki Naruto. Uzumaki, you say? Yes, what's wrong? Asked the old man's interlocutor. No, nothing. So you didn't tell me your name, Naruto clarified again. I am a shadow of this world, Naruto. My name is Uchiha Madara, the elder said and walked leisurely to his throne. Sitting on it comfortably, he pushed back his braid and continued talking to the blonde man. Uchiha Madara, 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 Madara. Recalled Uzumaki where he could hear him. Really? You're the Madara who fought Hashirama Senju and lost to him one-on-one. Naruto was just shocked at this, so he shut up and let Madara explain himself. Yes, I am indeed that Madara, as you put it, and I admit I lost to Hashirama, but I faked my death and also managed to take his cells from him, some of which are now in you and me. For another part one have an idea, the Uchiha finished and looked at Naruto with his one eye. And if you fought the first, you must be an evil man. Naruto asked. I will only say that I have very different goals now that are very different from before, Madara said, and Naruto prepared his question again. Why do you only have one eye? After the battle with Hashirama, I implanted his cells and awakened the Rinnegan, though many years later. Then my goal was to destroy the village and my own clan. Madara wanted to continue, but he was interrupted by Uzumaki. What is a Rinnegan? Naruto asked, trying to remember anything about it. Don't interrupt me. Rinnegan is the strongest dojutsu that can do a lot of things. It looks like there are rings coming from the pupil all over the eye. So, I'll continue. I thought the whole clan was to blame for my brother's death, so I decided to take revenge on both Konoha and the clan. When I awakened the Rinnegan, I was able to summon the empty 10-tailed shell that Rakudo Sennin had sealed on the moon many years ago. I decided to create an infinite illusion, using the moon. The moon would reflect the genjutsu and all humans would be affected by it, and because of the amount of Jubi's chakra, all humans were permanently affected by the genjutsu. Eventually I realized that I was already too old, and by then I was already absorbing Mazo's chakra, so I couldn't move far away from him. With that perspective, I came up with the perfect plan. I found a boy, Nagato, who was a distant relative of Senju, and while he was still young, I transplanted my eyes into him, along with my Rinnegan, while I transplanted a Sharingan from one of the Uchiha. When I gave him the Rinnegan, he was able to summon the shell of a 10-tailed or Geto Mazo, and I lost that ability. He was supposed to imprison the rest of the tailed ones in it and use their chakra for genjutsu and mapping from the moon. After catching all the Biju, I would be resurrected using Geto Rinne Tensai, which is a special Rinnegan technique that allows you to resurrect the dead you killed or have their consciousness. After that, I would have finished what I had started and my plan would have been accomplished. But, nothing lasts forever, and neither does my grudge. I began to wonder if I wanted to do this, and I began to have vague doubts about it, and all this kept me awake day and night. I was very tired of the endless war and wanted peace. I began to realize that I wanted to create an illusion of goodness, happiness and love, even though there would be no wars in it, people would only emit. As I got older, I realized something: there is no good without evil and there is no evil without good, and as long as there is love, there will be hate. There is always a balance that can be shaken. I began to realize that I wanted to doom mankind to mental destruction, but someone found out about my plan and decided to execute it. The worst part is that he's gotten Nagato on his side and is now posing as me. Whoever it is, but he's powerful and has many sources of information. I'll try to find out more about him from the fox, but it's not certain that he'll give me answers since I used him as a weapon during the battle against Hashirama, the old man added sadly as he put his hand to his face while Naruto pondered over what he had said. Why, old man, do you think Kyuubi knows anything about this? Naruto wondered. If you don't know, I'll tell you that the person behind this attack is the one who poached Nagato. Madara revealed a terrible secret. How do you know all this? Naruto glanced at the Uchiha incredulously. Well, I had a good informant, but he died, so I want to create a new Zetsu together with you, informed in his plans blonde Madara. Who's Zetsu? And why do you say you need to create him? Uzumaki inquired. Naruto, Zetsu is, you could say, a clone of Hashirama, but many times weaker and with artificially created intelligence. His body wasn't very stable last time, but this time will be different. It's a good thing I was able to place his mind in a special rod before he decomposed. All we have to do is create a body and put his mind in it, Madara finished. I see. Can I ask you not to bother Kyuubi for a while, because he's wasted a lot of chakra because of me. I think he deserves a rest, Naruto said, to which Madara was surprised, but didn't show it. Okay, I won't bother him, but it's dangerous to procrastinate, we need to know who we're dealing with. Yes, I understand, I think he'll replenish his strength in 2 days, Uzumaki replied and felt a strong pain in his right side. What's wrong? I was lying still. The blonde clawed at his right side with his hand, while Madara calmly looked at him and did nothing. Here we go. Madara said and stared intently at Uzumaki's right side, which began to change. His right side began to bend and move, and Naruto clenched his teeth, with his face contorted involuntarily mooing. Sweat broke out on his face and his eyes squinted in unbearable pain. Naruto screamed, and a substance began to separate from his right side, taking the shape of a hand. Naruto tried to catch his breath as he sprawled out on the bed. His eyes were closed, and there was a relieved smile on his face that it was over, and that he could feel his side and arm fully again. Well, it's all over now. How are you feeling and how do you like your whole body? The old man with long hair asked with a smile. After saying that, Naruto opened his eyes and sat up on the bed, examining his new arm and kneading it. It was the same as before, but a slightly different color due to the fact that it was missing a little tan. It seemed that the right arm was simply not tanned, but that defect would correct itself in time. Thank you, old man. I feel great, and I'm full of energy and strength. I still can't believe it. You gave me a second chance, and for that I'm very grateful to you, Naruto said with a smile and from the bottom of his heart, glowing with joy over the return of his hand. I'm glad you say that from the bottom of your heart, and I don't need any more thanks, the older man smiled tiredly. Naruto, I have a favor to ask of you, will you help me in my fight against that man who is going to execute my plan? I tell you at once that it is very important for the world and for my soul in particular. I have to atone for the sins I've committed, so I'm asking you to help me do that, Madara finished seriously, and Naruto answered him, almost without thinking. Of course I'll help you, you helped me, and I'm not attracted by the prospect of becoming a soulless puppet without a will, who lives in an illusory world and obediently does whatever she's told. Naruto smiled at the older man, looking into his Sharingan with his blue eyes. Good, now I'm going to sleep for a while to replenish Mazo's strength and chakra, because I've spent a decent amount on your body and Sharingan, and considering I'm over 100 years old, it's critical for my old body. My sleep may last for a few days, so you can get used to your new body and do some self-improvement. Oh, I almost forgot, there's a clock on the wall by your bed, and below it is a day and night meter so you don't get confused. With your body now you don't need to sleep, but if you get the urge you can sleep, the Uchiha instructed for the time of hibernation. Well I get it, you can build up your strength, Uzumaki said as he kneaded his back and neck while sitting on the bed. When I wake up, we'll start your training. Keep in mind, I've blocked the exit of the cave, so you won't be able to get out and look around. I'm going to bed, said the old man, and then he lay down comfortably and fell asleep. Yes, what a thing to happen to me. I never thought anything like this would happen to me before. Naruto talked to himself as he got out of bed. Getting out of bed, Naruto began to look around carefully. After looking around himself, he came to the conclusion that the only thing left of all his clothes were his black pants with pockets that were empty. The pants were torn and had become like shorts, and Uzumaki was also still wearing his shinobi sandals, the leaf tread he was so unable to find. After examining himself and thanking Madara that his shelter was warm, or was it that he didn't feel the cold, Naruto walked over to Mazo and began to look at him from all angles. Naruto even jumped on top of him and watched the entire shelter from above. From there he saw a couple doors. Out of curiosity he checked, but they appeared to be closed, though they were without handles or keyholes. Back at the head of the statue, Naruto sat down in lotus pose and began to meditate to feel and get used to his increasing chakra as he had been taught. Flashback. Naruto practicing in the evening 2 weeks before the Chunin exam. Naruto was trying to create a Rasengan that Ero Sannin Jiraiya showed him. He begged him for a long time to teach him some cool technique. Jiraiya showed him all the steps of the training and told him all about the Rasengan, loaded him up with balls to practice with, and after warning him about the high rank of the technique, he left the village on business and promised to return for the third stage of the Chunin exam. And so Naruto practiced for not the first hour in performing the first stage, but he was not successful in swirling his chakra in multiple directions. The point of this stage was to burst a ball of thin walls with chakra, directing the chakra in different directions. But his training was interrupted. The shadow of a man jumped into the clearing. "Hello, Naruto. I see you're practicing as usual," asked the unknown man. "Hello Obito-sensei, what are you doing here?" Naruto said, not taking his eyes off his training. "Jiraiya-san met me on the way and asked me to help you learn your new technique if you don't do well," the black-eyed brunette with slightly unruly hair answered cheerfully. He was dressed in a standard Junin uniform, but with the Uchiha clan insignia on his shoulder. On his back hung a small katana, secured in a painted scabbard, and the Konoha protector was tied on his right shoulder. "I see," Naruto replied briefly and started back up, but he was having trouble. "Naruto, I think your problem is partly that you don't feel your chakra well. I'm not talking about controlling it at all. In order to feel it properly you have to meditate," the Uchiha said. "Meditate?" the blonde questioned. "Yes. To do that, you have to sit in the lotus position and calm down. After that, you should try to merge with nature, you should not think and leave all thoughts, then you should feel the chakra in yourself and run it through your body, try it." "Okay, Obito-sensei, I'll try," Naruto said, sitting down in the lotus pose, and Obito repeated after him, and then he controlled the whole meditation process for Uzumaki. Naruto was indeed getting better at working with chakra and its form, and then he began to meditate more often. End of flashback. Naruto, remembering his training with Rasengan, smiled at the fact that he was able to learn and use it, even though it was quite difficult. After delving into the memories for a bit longer, he did begin to meditate and feel his chakra. For 4 hours Naruto sat on the mazo without distraction or changing his posture. Now he could feel his chakra even better and realize its volume. Also after that he started experimenting with the Sharingan, but no matter how hard he tried he couldn't activate the Uchiha clan's specialty. Naruto decided to let the chakra flow into his right hand and see what would happen. The effect surprised him, a small bush began to form from his palm. As he practiced controlling the new technique available to him, he noticed that he could also grow a bush from his other hand and decided to change its shape to a wooden pin. Naruto felt no fatigue, the kind of fatigue that makes you want to sleep. He decided to practice his plasticity and strength. First he started doing push-ups and rocking the rest of his body, then he stood on his hands on the headboard and then on Mazo's head. After that he practiced stretching and acrobatics. Naruto created a Rasengan, and what was his surprise when he created a gray-colored Rasengan instead of blue. To make sure of his thinking, he released the chakra and saw that it was gray, so he figured that his chakra had changed color because of the cells of the first Hokage. He had heard from someone that Hashirama's chakra was white. Perhaps because of the mixing, his own chakra had changed color to gray. After practicing controlling and releasing chakra for a while, Naruto noticed by the clock that 12 hours had passed since he had started training, and decided to lie down to sleep and watch some dreams, and chakra and power regenerated faster in sleep. Naruto woke up about 4 hours later and began practicing taijutsu with his clone, which he had put a large amount of chakra into. At this pace Naruto had 2 more days, after which he heard movement on Madara's throne. "You're finally awake, old man," Naruto said cheerfully, looking at Madara who was trying to sit up. "And hello to you too, Naruto, I see you've been practicing your skills after all." "That's good," the gray-haired old man said, looking at the wall, which was covered in rather large craters. "I didn't realize you knew techniques of such power. I guess you could have gotten out of the shelter by using this technique on the rubble, but you stayed." "Show me that technique," Madara said, looking at the blonde man in anticipation. Naruto didn't wait long and formed a gray-colored Rasengan with one right hand, and after that he went to the wall and hid it with his technique, which created another hole in the wall. "Very interesting. I think it's rank A, no less. This technique is definitely very difficult to execute. I managed to notice that the chakra was swirling in different directions. This is a perfect control of the shape of the chakra. Such chaos of chakra is hard to hold in the shape of a perfect ball, still the technique is based on form, but if you mix it with an element or even just use elemental chakra, the effect is amazing. I'm surprised you were able to learn it at such an early age. How old are you, anyway, and who taught it to you?" Madara asked the question, and Uzumaki thought in his mind that this Uchiha is a genius, which many people could not match. No one had ever been able to describe such a fast Rasengan, but Madara had broken all the previous records and had even figured out how to improve it. "Yes, you're a genius. So fast to figure out the technique and its potential, as well as how to improve it," said Uzumaki, marveling at this wise old man. "No, it's just years of experience, and I've seen a lot of techniques in my time, and I know a lot about the world, shinobi clans, techniques, and other things. Okay. I'm 13 years old, and I had already passed my Chunin exam and was in the 3rd stage when we were attacked by shinobi from the United Villages of Sound and Sand. I fought my 1-year-old to protect my friends and the villagers. He was very strong, but in addition to his own strength, he is also a Jinchuriki. I managed to defeat him, but he damaged my body very seriously. I fought One-Tailed as his Jinchuriki gave him full control over my body. I almost lost, and if it wasn't for the fox's chakra and the toad boss's help, I, or what was left of me, would have been buried somewhere," Naruto said sitting on the bed. At the end of the conversation he moved his right arm as if to show that it was the one that Shukaku had damaged. "I see, and I was wondering why and where you got such serious injuries. You seem to be a good shinobi, then I'll help you become even stronger for a good cause. I understand from your story that you value your friends and comrades very much. If so, then I will help you become strong for them." Madara smiled and looked into Naruto's eyes. Seeing the gratitude there, he continued. "Naruto, what are your skills as a shinobi? What techniques do you know?" The Uchiha began to question the white-haired boy. "Well, I can use Rasengan, shadow clones galore, standard shinobi skills. I remember. I can also summon toads," Naruto replied cheerfully. Madara thought about that for a moment. "It seems like a standard ability, except for the Rasengan and clones, but I'm sorry to disappoint you. When I implanted you with Hashirama's cells, I performed a ritual that has the side effect of canceling all contracts made before. Your name has disappeared from their contract scroll, because everyone thinks you died in the battle with the one-tailed Jinchuriki. Wait, I can't summon toads now. They were my trump card in battles. The toad boss was so strong and big that some enemies just lost their cool and were easy to deal with," Naruto objected, frustrated, but thought it wasn't polite to say that to the man who saved you and restored your body, so he hurriedly apologized. "I'm sorry," I snapped, "I just didn't think it would happen. So now everyone thinks I died and didn't fulfill my wish to become Hokage." Naruto was a little indignant. "Don't apologize, and as for the contract, it's to your advantage. Yeah, if you want, you can renegotiate it in the future. We're getting sidetracked. According to my information, Nagato and John Doe were forming an organization to carry out my plan. You can join their ranks and operate behind enemy lines. To do so, they can't know you survived. You will have to hide your Kyuubi chakra and not show that you are Uzumaki Naruto. If they discover this, they will try to capture and extract the fox. When that happens, the world will end. I don't know if John Doe will be able to subdue Jubi, but when I created the plan, I was counting on the ten-tailed being controlled by me with my Rinnegan. But I don't know what he's up to, so you'll have to find out from their organization. Madara announced his new plan. I see, I'll have to hide who I really am. I'll take care of your training so you can carry out your plan. But I think they might find out that Nine-Tails won't be revived if his Jinchuriki is dead, so you'll join their organization under the pretext of knowing what happened to Kyuubi. You could say that the fox somehow escaped, but hid, and then create a release of his chakra somewhere to attract their attention and gain their trust, Naruto said in an amazingly clever speech. Well done, Naruto. I was afraid you'd turn out to be a fool, but I got lucky with you, the old man said, making Naruto smile. It's just time for me to grow up if I'm going to have this kind of responsibility. I used to fool around, but I don't intend to do that now, so I'm going to gain knowledge and experience, Naruto said again. That's right, but that's our destiny as shinobi, to grow up very early, the older man added sadly to Uzumaki's remarks. Yes, Naruto agreed with Madara and bowed his head, almost completely giving himself over to the memories. Good, then let's talk to the fox right now, Madara said, and 3 tomos spun clockwise in his Sharingan. Before Naruto knew it, he was in his subconscious with Madara, and in front of them was a cage with a fox with 9 tails sleeping on large pillows. Once they got into the subconscious, a couple things happened. The first was that Madara had gotten younger, and now there was a handsome man with long black hair standing in front of Uzumaki. The second was that the fox, as soon as he sensed the presence of Madara and Naruto, immediately opened blood-red eyes that were full of hatred and contempt. That gaze was fixed on Madara. As soon as their gazes met, the fox roared like never before and tried to nail the hated man with his paw, but the cage prevented him and his paw collided with the bars of unknown metal, making a nasty scraping sound on contact. Madara! Shrieked the 9-tailed fox demon in a distraught voice. I will kill you. The demon shouted again and slammed his huge paw against the cage again, making the same nasty sound. How dare you show up here after all you've done? Kyuubi's scream was interrupted by Madara's action. At one time Madara would never have kneeled in front of anyone, but now he was kneeling in front of the cage and the fox, bowing his head to the floor. This was something the fox just couldn't expect, so he opened his mouth and continued to stare at the Uchiha as Naruto did. Forgive me, fox, for all the sins I have committed against you. Uchiha said in a regretful and sorrowful voice, but the fox still didn't move and stared at him without blinking. Forgive me if you can. I brought you so much trouble and problems that I do not know what to do to make you forgive me. Madara got up from his knees and looked into the fox's eyes. I need to think about it, the fox replied, and was about to turn away from the guests when the Uchiha called out to him again. Help us, a man unknown to us wants to resurrect Jubi and use his chakra to activate infinite genjutsu on all living things. If that happens, the world will end. Can you remember who attacked and almost destroyed Hidden Leaf with your help? The Uchiha got to the point. Wasn't it you? The fox asked and looked at Madara, not understanding, but with a hint of anger. Even you think I was controlling you, but in fact I haven't been physically able to leave my hiding place for years, and I look like this now. Madara showed the fox what he really looked like, and Kyuubi was very surprised. I don't even know who it could have been, he was wearing a mask, I didn't get a good look at it, but he called himself Madara, and his chakra is almost the same as yours, Kyuubi replied. So you don't know anything. Then Naruto and I will go, so that I can prepare him for the dangers and serious battles. Madara was about to leave, but he was called by the 9-tailed man. You were different before. You were interested in nothing but revenge, and now, as I understand it, you want to help Naruto save the world. The fox neither asked nor affirmed skeptically. I've had enough of the endless slaughter and I've come to my senses. I shouldn't have hurt you. I shouldn't have feuded with Senju. I think Hashirama will forgive me for using his body. Anyway, I've changed and now I'm not going to take revenge on anyone, but rather, I'm trying to protect this world." Madara finished, and the fox looked at him and marveled at the changes in this seemingly rotten man. "I'll see you around," Madara said and began to dispel his technique. "Thanks for everything," Naruto said to the fox, and he and the Uchiha disappeared from the blonde man's subconscious. "Alright, let's start practicing," Madara said cheerfully after he and the blonde man were in reality. "Naruto, from your narration about your strength, I understand that you are not proficient in elemental techniques." Madara clarified. "Yes, no one has trained me in the use of the elements," Naruto snickered slightly. "Well, it doesn't really matter, since I'm going to start teaching you taijutsu. The stronger your body, the more chakra you have. Now I will immerse you in my special genjutsu where we will be in our real bodies. Time moves a little slower there, but still not slow enough. About 1 day in reality equals 2 days in genjutsu. In it I will be able to change whatever I want, so that's where I will teach you my taijutsu," the Uchiha said and opened his left eye wider. 3 tomos swirled in it again and then they were in white space. The elder took on his youthful appearance again, as the blonde man subconsciously did. "Naruto, for the best effect of your training, you will need to awaken your Sharingan. I can tell you right away, you will be able to awaken it like all Uchiha, through stress and other emotions. One Uchiha had your Sharingan, but he had an incurable disease. Shortly before he died, he asked to have his Sharingan taken away, and afterward I kept it for myself just in case. Be warned that this incident was many years ago, when I was in my early 20s. Now, he awakened it shortly before his death, so you'll have to develop it on your own. But there are 2 huge advantages to my method. The first is that your Sharingan is no weaker than a real Uchiha's, and the second is that it requires little chakra to activate and no chakra at all to maintain. In fact, your Sharingan is better than the Uchiha's. I've put a lot of effort into it. Alright, now I'm going to change this space for you to awaken it, so get ready," Uchiha Madara said, and Naruto hovered a bit from the overload of information. "I'm ready Madara, you may begin," Naruto said in a raised tone, and the Uchiha nodded approvingly and disappeared. Following his disappearance, the atmosphere around the blonde man changed. Before Naruto could blink, Madara was gone, and the once white space in front of him was no longer white. Uzumaki blinked once more and was horrified at what he saw. He tried to blink to get rid of the illusion of what was happening, but he couldn't. The blood-red sky loomed ominously over the ruins of Konoha. This once strongest village could only be recognized by the rock with the faces of the great shinobi who had previously contributed to the history of not only the village, but of the world, and also by the huge gates, of which only large fragments remained. They were visible from the square because the houses in that direction had been destroyed, making it seem as if something large had been dragged to the square. The rock that towered above the ruins of the residence was broken and destroyed in some places, and there was not much left of the square itself. It was in the middle of the square that Uzumaki stood, and most importantly, he didn't hear a single sound, no shouts or voices of people, only a ringing silence. Exactly the silence, so mysterious and so scary at the same time. Naruto felt bad, sweat was dripping down his forehead, he himself was cold and trying to catch his breath. Suddenly he heard a sound, or rather the clang of swords. Without a second's hesitation, the blonde rushed towards the sound. Jumping over the debris of the walls and avoiding the large rubble, Naruto moved towards the ruined residence, of which almost nothing remained, listening to the sounds of battle. After about half a minute, the boy ran out to a more direct area and what he saw shocked him. Standing outside the residence was a man dressed in black and hooded, and kneeling, right in front of him, was a shinobi. The man in black held a huge sword in his right outstretched hand, and you could tell by the reflections on the blade how badly it was sharpened. To the blonde man, the sword reminded him of Zabuza's thug, but this sword was slightly larger and, through the rusty blood stains, the matte black blade was visible in places. "Stop!" Naruto found the strength to shout to the strange man, but in the next instant the man in black swung his sword crosswise very quickly. The blonde man barely caught his movements and the man kneeling next to the swordsman slowly disintegrated into 4 pieces. When Naruto saw what had happened to him, he could barely contain his gagging. Uzumaki found the strength to hold back the vomit that was coming up to his throat and, struggling to pull himself together, he shouted to the unknown assassin. Why? Why did you do this? Who the hell are you? Uzumaki went wild, forgetting about everything, but the swordsman still answered. And you try to find out, kid, said the stranger in a scary voice that made Naruto shiver inside. Without waiting for an answer from the kid, the stranger rushed at him and swung his huge cleaver. The black sword whistled near Uzumaki's head just a centimeter away from his hair, making him scared for his life. The blonde bounced away from the stranger with great speed and began to think about what to do to survive, not to win. Are you fast, or is it your fear that affects your instinct for self-preservation? Smirked the man in black. But either way, you can't live. Now Naruto was cursing Madara for dragging him into this fucking genjutsu. That's right. Genjutsu. Naruto mentally rejoiced and folded the seal of concentration. Kai! Shouted Uzumaki, but nothing happened. Holy shit! Naruto shouted, forgetting that he wanted to take off the genjutsu. His train of thought was interrupted by a huge black sword that was heading in his direction. Naruto thought of nothing better than to fight the swordsman. Jumping away from the sword's trajectory, Uzumaki created 20 clones and sent them at the enemy, while he created a Rasengan and began to wait for his turn. It didn't take long. The swordsman chopped all the clones with ease and was rapidly approaching the original. Quickly closing the distance, he slashed Naruto from top to bottom, but the blonde managed to dodge the deadly blow and direct the Rasengan at his opponent. The A-class technique almost reached the target, but the swordsman spun around his axis and put his foot out, which successfully knocked Uzumaki off his feet. The deadly weapon flew at Naruto, but Uzumaki quickly rolled away from the point of impact, but he was still hit on the shoulder. Jumping to his feet, Naruto grabbed the wound on his right shoulder and looked at his black opponent with anger. Haha, what a look, the swordsman said haughtily, but Naruto, not giving in to the provocation, lunged at him with Rasengan in his hands. But it was not destined to reach the goal, as the opponent got away from the technique and slammed his foot hard on the blonde's head. Uzumaki was thrown back a few meters and hit the nearest wall, punching a hole in it. Half a minute later, the dirty blonde came out of there, barely able to walk and holding his left side, with a new wound, now on his head, from which viscous drops of blood flowed. But the boy was still able to fight. Naruto lunged at the swordsman again, making another attempt to hit his opponent with his Rasengan, but he dodged it and counterattacked him. Naruto was lucky and dodged, but his luck didn't last long, and then Naruto was back against the wall as the stranger approached him and swung his sword. With a strong will to live and rage towards this man, Naruto saw the sword move in a slower motion, as well as the man's chakra and the next point of his attack. By jerking the other way, Naruto was able to avoid a fatal blow to the heart. He then quickly waved his hand towards the swordsman and out of his palm came a wooden pin that entered his opponent's chest with a nasty sound. Naruto clenched the hand that the pin was sticking out of into a fist and the swordsman's body was pierced by the many wooden spikes that came out of the first one. Ka! The stranger coughed before his hood fell off, revealing a view of the swordsman's face. What? Naruto shouted, staring with his awakened Sharingan with one tomo in each eye at the swordsman's face. This was something he hadn't expected or even imagined. He was looking at himself. Naruto's face contorted in a grimace of horror. He couldn't understand how this swordsman could be him. Naruto felt fresh blood dripping onto him. Making matters worse was the fact that he had killed himself, and before that his doppelganger had killed the entire village. From the intense shock, Naruto lost consciousness. Later, through the darkness, Uzumaki felt pain in his body, and then opened his eyes and looked around. He was already lying on the bed, and on his floor couch sat the old man Madara. Whatever genjutsu you have, it's been enough of a strain on you. Madara picked up on one detail and lifted his closed eyelids, looking at Uzumaki with his black eyes. Yeah, it was too much. Naruto replied, taking a seat on the bed. So did you accomplish what you needed to? Started with the Uchiha's main objective. Yeah, I guess so, I just saw my opponent's chakra, his next point of impact. Naruto stammered. Yes, it's a Sharingan, now to activate it direct a little bit of your chakra to your eyes, Madara explained, and the blonde immediately decided to try it. Naruto closed his eyes, and when he opened them, he looked at Madara with blood-red eyes with one tomo in each eye. Very good, and to deactivate the Sharingan, just imagine it being deactivated. Yes, yes, Naruto said looking around with the activated dojutsu. After looking around the room in Madara, the blonde's gaze stopped on the statue of Mazo. There's a lot of chakra in it. Uzumaki gave his verdict. If only, it's a lot of chakra to maintain me, and your future training will take a lot of it, so by my calculations, I won't last very long. But if you pumped your chakra or the fox's chakra, I'd have enough for your excellent training, including techniques and staying in my genjutsu almost all the time, Madara said, leaning his head on his right hand. Wow, so if I transfer some of Mazo's chakra, then you can teach me a great deal. Naruto shouted excitedly, almost shouting. Yes, replied the Uchiha succinctly. Cool. Then I'll ask Kyuubi for chakra and we'll start training, the blonde said, walking over to Mazo and sinking into his subconscious. Decided to visit me, Naruto? The nine-tailed fox demon asked in a loud bass. Hello to you, too, his companion replied cheerfully, settling down on his throne, near the cage. I thought about Madara's request for forgiveness and decided to forgive him, because part of it is understandable, the fox said. Okay, I'll tell him. Kyuubi, could you lend me some of your chakra and pump some into Mazo's summoner so that Madara has enough for my training in his genjutsu and to keep him alive? The blonde said shyly, remembering the last time he had taken the fox's chakra. In principle, I don't mind, the fox agreed. Thank you. See you later. Naruto said and disappeared from his subconscious. When Naruto opened his eyes, he found Madara in the same place and noticed that only a couple of seconds had passed. The fox has agreed to share his chakra, Naruto cheered Madara. So, go to the statue and put your hand on it, and then pour Biju chakra into it, and I'll watch the absorption process, explained the Uchiha and slowly walked towards the statue. Naruto followed him. Naruto bypassed the old man and placed his hand on the statue, waiting for Madara's next instructions. May I, the Uchiha said after he had made the necessary seals and Naruto was covered in a blue glow. Yes, Naruto replied jokingly and began to transfer Kyuubi's chakra to Mazo. It took 2 hours to transfer the chakra, the skin on his arm burned and he tried not to move it, he just kept transferring the chakra. Enough, the elder said releasing his hands from the seal of concentration and the blue glow ceased to be around Naruto. You hurt your arm, go rest, I need it too. After you wake up we'll start practicing, the Uchiha explained and Naruto went to his bed holding his right arm without crossing him. Naruto grimaced in pain as he covered his arm with the blanket, but then leaned back tiredly and after a few minutes he drifted off into the realm of Morpheus. Madara, after standing still for a moment, made his way to his couch. There he made himself comfortable and fell asleep as well. After a few hours of rest, Naruto opened his slick eyes and sat up on the bed rubbing his healed arm. Looking over at Madara's throne he found him sleeping, so he walked over to him kneading his body. Hey, Madara, Naruto said, rubbing the shoulder of the second strongest shinobi of the old days, or maybe not even the second strongest, because he was able to awaken Rinnegan, the greatest of all dojutsu. The Uchiha opened his eyes and straightened in his seat. Oh, you're ready now, Naruto. Good, then let's start practicing, Madara looked into Naruto's eyes. Naruto saw moving tomos in his Sharingan and then he was in a white space with the young Madara. So, Uzumaki, you will now perform strength exercises, as well as body strengthening, stretching and many other exercises. First, you'll warm up properly, and then you'll do what I show and tell you. This is the kind of warm-up I used to do when I was young. It's very effective, though we used to have battles almost every day, so there was often no time to warm up. Madara stood in front of Naruto and began to chase him in the tail and neck. Naruto did nothing but run around the stadium the Uchiha had created, doing pull-ups and push-ups from the poles. After hours of violence over his own body, the brunette and blonde took a break. Naruto did not waste time and asked the shinobi. Tell me, How long did you fight the first? The blonde asked another question. Well, according to my internal clock, about half a day, the brunette answered thoughtfully. Naruto stammered, but was interrupted. So, I think you've already rested, so now you'll do this physical training every day, gradually increasing the load. That's good. Now I want to see your taijutsu level, so attack. Madara said and backed up a little. It's an honor to spar with a legend, the blonde joked and attacked the Uchiha. Swinging his arm and hitting the void, Madara deflected to the side, simultaneously putting his foot in front of the blonde's legs, and grabbing him by the scruff of the neck, easily throwing Uzumaki aside. You have the wrong tactics of attack, and in general with such a blow you would cause weak damage. There is no strength in it, Uchiha instructed, and Naruto did not waste time, and again decided to attack. All of the blonde's blows failed to reach their target. The brunette gracefully and easily moved away from all the blows, and in every blow he found a flaw. Naruto began to tire and his breathing became intermittent, so he started to play big. Uzumaki activated his Sharingan and attacked the strongest Uchiha again. His strikes became more accurate and Madara started counter-attacking, which made it very hard for the blonde to do so, and he started taking advantage of his opponent's disadvantage, namely the fact that Madara had one eye. After a couple minutes, the brunette stopped the fight and started calling out the pros and cons of Naruto's fighting techniques. Okay, now watch, I'm going to create Hashirama here now, and he and I are going to fight in taijutsu. I want you to watch and copy our movements with your Sharingan, then I'll show you the individual stances and proper strikes along with blocks and other tricks. Understood, Naruto replied briefly and waited for another legend of the past to appear in front of him. The Uchiha didn't make Naruto wait long and created Hashirama and then engaged him in battle. Naruto admiringly copied their movements and memorized every detail. After an hour of fighting, the Uchiha dispelled the illusion and approached Naruto. Did you copy it? You bet. How could you not copy the fighting style and movements of two of the greatest shinobi? Let's take a look at everything you copied. After a few more hours of taijutsu training, Naruto and Madara returned to the real world. The Uchiha went straight to his seat to sleep, and Uzumaki climbed onto Mazo and began to meditate. After a long meditation and chakra work, Naruto practiced his stances and went to bed with nothing to do. The next day Naruto woke up rested and awake. Looking at the clock, Naruto stretched and grimaced at the pain in his muscles, then, kneading them, went to the sleeping old man. Hey, Madara. Naruto grabbed the white-haired man's shoulder, and his arm was immediately seized in a steel vice by Madara's hand. It's you, Naruto. Sorry, reflex, the Uchiha said, releasing Naruto. Strange. I shook you by the shoulder a while ago and there was no reflex, Naruto said, rubbing his grabbed arm, then glanced obliquely at the old man. I had to limit my body movements because of Mazo's chakra savings, but now I have enough, so I decided not to, because Mazo himself replenishes his chakra, the old man said slowly, wiping his only eye. But how could you limit your movements while you were asleep? Naruto wondered and looked at Madara incredulously. And that's my secret. Standing up, Madara grinned and walked towards one of the doors without a handle. Where are you going? Naruto asked in bewilderment, but Madara didn't say anything, but put his hand on the door and it slowly slid away into the wall. Whoa! Naruto opened his mouth and stared at the old man, demanding an answer. Oh, I forgot, you don't know how to get into the rooms, Madara began. To open the doors, you have to pour some chakra into them and they will open, Madara explained and entered the room, from which came the sound of gurgling water. Naruto wanted to ask, but Madara was already out of sight, so Naruto decided to wait for him. To avoid wasting time, Naruto started practicing and meditating. After practicing for an hour, Naruto didn't even notice when the door opened again, and out came Madara, wearing a clean hoodie that resembled his old one, but with a different color. Where have you been? Naruto asked, jumping off Mazo after his meditation. Taking a water bath. Today I decided to dedicate the day to relaxation, so you don't have to wait for practice today, the Uchiha replied relaxedly and looked at the boy with his one eye. I can take a bath too, right? Naruto asked in a confused tone. You're asking me that? You're a resident here too, so don't ask stupid questions, the white-haired man said while closing his eye. Ah. Naruto wanted to ask again, but Madara interrupted him. Stop us speaking. The towel and other supplies are there. Everyone, don't stop me from thinking about your future training, said, as the Uchiha cut him off. After hesitating for a bit, Naruto walked over to the door and let his chakra flow through it. After a couple seconds, the door also moved aside and Naruto made his way into the room. After taking a couple steps, Naruto stepped into the room, after which the door closed and the boy could look around quietly. In the corner of the room, an underground waterfall was running down from the ceiling. There was a specially made platform under it, so that it would be comfortable to stand on, and the water would go under the ground and not stagnate in his feet. It was like a shower. Not far from the waterfall was made a spring with warm water, which was clear from the steam coming from the surface of the water. Why there was warm water in the spring, Uzumaki didn't guess. Almost right next to the spring against the wall was a locker, where towels and some soap were on the shelves. Also in another section of the locker were various clothes. After standing there for a while with his mouth open in bewilderment and surprise, Naruto went under the invigorating jets of the waterfall. After washing a little, Uzumaki walked over to the spring and sat down in the water up to his neck with pleasure, blissfully closing his eyes and thinking of his friends while reminiscing. After sitting in the spring for an hour, Naruto got out of it and walked over to the clothes closet, looking for something suitable for him by eye, but not finding the right size, he decided to make his own clothes. Rummaging through his things, Naruto found himself a t-shirt and pants with sandals. Throwing his cloak over himself, he went into the main room. As he passed Madara, Naruto stopped and asked, "Where can I find a kunai or at least a sharp knife in this cave?" Madara didn't even deign to open his closed eye, only pointing his finger at another door in the wall. Without asking too many questions, Naruto walked over to the door and, infusing some chakra, opened it. Upon entering it, Uzumaki froze with admiration. There were various weapons hanging and lying on the walls and tables, as well as various armor hanging on mannequins. Above everything were large gunbai pointing devices of samurai that they used to send various signals to their men. The gunbai had been converted into weapons and looked very specific. Placing the clothes on a vacant table, he began to approach each table and mannequin, inspecting the contents. After half an hour, the blonde still remembered his purpose. Taking the kunai, he left the room with thoughts of visiting the armory soon. Sitting down on his bed, the blonde carefully measured and cut things that were too big for him to fit. Creating a clone and ordering it to go to the bathroom for clean bedding, Naruto began to put on everything he had managed to create and was now pleased with himself. He now looked like a human being instead of a feral beast. Satisfied with himself, Naruto lay down on the bed he had already made and relaxed completely, thinking about his past life and his present one. As he thought about everything, Naruto remembered all of his comrades and buddies that he would see in an indefinite amount of time, and it made him sad. No. I've made up my mind. I will protect them at all costs, and to do that I will have to stick around. I will destroy the threat to the shinobi world. Naruto said seriously with his eyes closed, and the corners of Madara's lips trembled in a smile. Naruto then decided to have a conversation with the fox and delved into his subconscious. "Hello, fox," shouted the restless blonde cheerfully, to which the nine-tailed one opened his eyes and stretched. "I'm sorry I woke you up." Naruto apologized embarrassedly. "Hello to you, too. It's okay, why are you here?" The fox got straight to the point. "I just wanted to check up on you and see how you were doing." "Although I see that it's crowded," joked Uzumaki, sitting down on his throne. "I'll set it up in a moment." Naruto waved his hand, making the ceiling and the side walls of his subconsciousness expand, making the cage much more spacious. "Why did you wave your hand?" QB asked a question. "Ah, well, it's just for the sake of appearances." Uzumaki was even more embarrassed and scratched the back of his head out of embarrassment, and the fox blurted out. "What fighting techniques do you know? Why are you called a natural disaster?" Naruto inquired. "TZ, I don't really know if I should tell you everything. The fox tugged the cat's tail and grinned as he thought of something. Well, please. Uzumaki begged in a pitiful voice and looked at the nine-tailed demon with kawaii eyes, which made the latter drop out again. Alright. Open the cage and I'll show you all my abilities, the fox smirked. What? The blonde questioned apprehensively and looked at the prisoner with uncomprehending eyes. Ha ha ha. You should see yourself now, Naruto, you're making a face like that. Ha ha. I'll never forget it. I was kidding, sort of, Kyuubi continued. What do you mean, kind of? Exclaimed the kid. I knew you'd catch on to that. I was joking, the fox stopped mocking the poor boy. So what can you do? Uzumaki continued to insist on his own. One day I'll demonstrate it to you, but for now it will remain a secret, smiled the fox, and the blonde on the contrary a little upset. Okay, then I won't tell you what I can do, the boy grumbled resentfully under his breath. Are you talking about the Sharingan or the wood element? Kyuubi asked shrilly, grinning toothily. About the Sharingan. Stop. How did you know that? The blonde jumped up from his seat. I just know where to look, the Biju smirked. I don't play like that, the kid pouted, and Kyuubi chuckled again. Strangely enough, the Biju liked talking to his jailer, and the thought of saying his real name popped into his head, but the fox decided to wait, thus mentally cutting the kid off again. Tell me, how did you know about my new abilities? The blonde asked in bewilderment. Okay, I just asked Madara how he put you back together, but he surprised me by telling me that he had replaced part of you and that you could now use the Sharingan and the wood element, Kyuubi revealed. I could have guessed, I should have studied better. The fox looked at him with a smile. I'm going to go, don't miss me, fox, I'll see you soon, Naruto smiled, waving goodbye. Yeah, bye, stop by, the nine-tailed man stretched out in response, and Naruto slowly dissolved. Inept show off, the fox said into the void and closed his eyes, falling into sleep. Uzumaki returned to the real world and decided to sleep, so he immediately laid down on the bed and fell asleep. The next day, Naruto woke the Uchiha up and made him do strength exercises, and he went to the third room, saying he would be back by the end of the workout. Naruto began to enthusiastically fulfill the old man's assignment and diligently began his exercises. An hour and a half later, Madara returned from the third room and his clothes were dusty and stained in places. I'm at the source, start meditating, and when you're done, go to the room I was just in. There's a surprise waiting for you there, I've put what you need on your desk, Madara spoke without stopping, heading to the room with the source. Surprise. Naruto said, as if tasting the word. No one has ever surprised me before. Naruto said sadly into the void, but quickly chased away the sadness and bad mood and went to Mazo. After meditating for an hour, Naruto jumped off the statue and walked slowly towards the cherished surprise door. Carefully passing chakra through the door, Naruto frantically wondered what might be behind it, but in the meantime the door opened and Uzumaki stepped inside with his eyes closed. As soon as he opened them, he went into shock. What? Events in Konoha after the death of Uzumaki Naruto. A week has passed since the clash between Sound, Sand and Leaf. The villages were able to come to an agreement and make a truce. Because the cage of Konoha had fallen in the fierce battle, it was decided to put one of the three Sannin, Tsunade, as Hokage. There was great grief, but not only for the dead shinobi and Sarutobi Hiruzen, but the younger generation in the Leaf grieved for their comrade who had managed to protect innocent people from the wrath of the Biju at the cost of his life. Team 7 grieved for their partner the most, but at first some simply refused to believe that Uzumaki Naruto had died in battle with the one-tailed demon. They were later convinced after finding only Leaf's tread, a large pool of blood, and pieces of his arm on the battlefield. After that, many people were depressed, but their family and friends helped them cope with the pain, because everyone needed to show up at the grave of the cheerful and determined kid. Everyone from his academy graduating class and other acquaintances came to say goodbye to him. Some just stood there with their heads bowed to the ground, some brought flowers and quickly left, unable to hold back their tears, and some, unashamedly crying in front of everyone. The Junin mentors also stood with saddened faces, and Maeda Guy was shedding tears. An hour passed, and everyone began to leave, but one man couldn't help but leave without saying anything. Sasuke stood at the grave of the man who had become almost a brother to him, wearing all black and holding a shredded leaf tread in his hand. The people had already dispersed, but the Uchiha stood by the grave, not saying a word, but soon he did decide to pour out his soul. Uzumaki Naruto, with sorrow in his voice, read the young representative of the Uchiha clan and looked at the setting sun. Why did you die? Sasuke said into the void. Why? Unable to bear the tension, shouted the black-haired man and fell to his knees, keeping his back straight and tilting his head forward. Tears slowly flowed from his eyes, dripping onto the dry grass. The wind rustled the leaves, giving the atmosphere a peculiar tinge. You've become almost a brother to me, so why didn't you let me feel how good it was to have someone as close as you? You helped me drown out my pain and hate, you always did what you promised. So why did you die without fulfilling your promise? You said you wouldn't die until you became Hokage. You lied. You lied. Sasuke shouted in his last breath, tears still flowing from his eyes. He hadn't felt this empty in his soul in a very long time, not since the night when almost the entire clan had been slaughtered by his own beloved brother, whom he admired so much and dreamed of surpassing. The Uchiha was so engrossed in his memories, which were related to his friend, that he didn't notice the man approaching him. Come on, Sasuke, would he want you to torture yourself like that here? A warm hand rested on the young man's shoulder and a voice tried to calm him down. He would want you to keep going forward no matter what, to not give up. So don't give up, Sasuke. Said the same voice confidently, and from the Uchiha's breathing, you could tell that he was beginning to calm down. You're right. I will not give up. I believe in this way of ninja. Sasuke's voice stopped shaking, and with his sleeve he wiped the remnants of tears from his face. Let's go home, Sasuke, tomorrow we have a new day ahead of us, and we must live it for good, so that he will be proud of us, even after death. Yes, you're right, let's go home, Uncle Obito, Sasuke said, and the two Uchiha clan members went to their family mansion to start a new life. What? Naruto shrieked so that Madara, who was in the far room, heard his scream and smiled contentedly. Naruto stared wide-eyed in amazement at the room and refused to believe it was true. The room was filled with large cabinets filled with books and scrolls of various sizes. From the realization that he would have to read all of this, Naruto fell into a stupor, for it would take him many years to study such a huge amount of material. After a while, coming out of shock, Uzumaki walked over to a large table, on which lay a huge scroll, and next to it was a small note. It said the following: you'll have to read all of this, otherwise you'll have a very hard time navigating life. This big scroll next to it was made to make it easy to find the section in the right book. On the other side of the sheet, I have made a list of books that you should read first. Leave the reading of the books to your clones, but take the shogi in your locker and come see me. Naruto mentally smacked himself on the forehead as he read the note, because even in the furthest corner of his subconscious mind, the thought of clones didn't occur. Taking a deep breath and exhaling, Naruto flipped the sheet over and began to read the titles of the books. After creating the required number of clones, Naruto grabbed a shogi from the closet and hurried back to the main hall. Madara, refreshed after his bath, was already sitting on his couch waiting for Naruto. How did you like the surprise? Grinned Madara, who had learned about Naruto's dislike of books. In response to the question, the blonde mumbled something unintelligible, to which the Uchiha only grinned. Okay, now sit next to him. It was only after these words that Naruto noticed something resembling two stumps next to the couch, one of which was apparently a table. Putting the game on the improvised table, Naruto sat down on the other and began to make pieces, repeating after the Uchiha. I see this as your first time playing. Don't think anything bad about this game, on the contrary, it is very good and clearly helps to develop strategic and tactical planning, said Madara, and then began to explain the rules and principles of the game to the blonde and clones created by him. It took quite some time to explain, and after the clones were dispelled, Naruto began to play. During the game, Madara noticed the blonde's shortcomings and showed him the best way to act in any situation. The boy and the elder spent 4 hours playing the game, After which Uzumaki wanted to dispel the reading clones, but he was stopped by Madara, citing that it was too early. The blonde man started to get a headache after this tournament, so Naruto reached his bed and fell asleep. Naruto woke up the next day and found that he knew the information from the books he had read, glad that he didn't have to work too hard. After washing his face, Uzumaki headed to the library again. After creating a small number of clones, Naruto headed over to Madara, who had already managed to wake up. "Well, Naruto, let's get to practicing," the Uchiha said and immersed both of them in his genjutsu. "Madara, why didn't you transplant someone else's eye too? I don't feel comfortable with just one, do I?" Naruto asked, starting his training. "I don't see the point. Why would I need an eye transplant for nothing if I can't take part in battles? I don't want to waste my time and materials," said a rejuvenated Madara, and then told Naruto to continue his training. After an hour of warming up, the blonde once again contemplated with his Sharingan the sparring between the Uchiha and a few other people, which showed how to fight against a crowd. 2 months passed at this pace. During that time, Naruto was able to become well versed in taijutsu using the Sharingan and clones. After using the Sharingan for a long time, Naruto was able to take it to the next level. He now had 2 tomos in each of his eyes. On top of that, Uzumaki had mastered the skill of cold weapons quite well, focusing on the use of the sword and gunbai. Naruto devoted the next 2 months to improving his chakra control and long-term meditation. Thanks to the increased training, the blonde became better at controlling his chakra and its volume increased. Uzumaki was also getting used to the fox's chakra by letting it flow through the chakra circulation system. The blonde learned to mix his chakra and the tailed man's chakra, and to use small amounts of his pure chakra. By giving the chakra, Kyuubi was no longer trying to take control of the boy's body, so Naruto could safely use it in battle, gaining a great advantage over his opponents. For the next 3 months, Madara raced Naruto in biology and anatomy. He was preparing him for the important business of creating Zetsu. The Uchiha also trained Naruto in the art of Irionen, as well as teaching him how to use and counter genjutsu. And now the long-awaited hour had come. Naruto and Madara were preparing to create a new Zetsu, but suddenly there was an explosion and rocks fell from the ceiling. "What was that?" Naruto asked the older man in a worried voice, shaking out his shoulder-length hair. "I have no idea, Naruto. But there may be a fight going on up there, so you'll have to go outside and look around." "Outside, then?" Naruto said excitedly. "If there's nothing interesting, you can walk around for a while I set up the equipment." Madara turned around and headed for another room, but stopped and said, "Take your weapons with you just in case." "Okay," Naruto called out in a cheerful voice, already running into the armory. Happening outside. The shinobi from the grass village encountered the robber shinobi while doing a Class A mission. "Hey! Stop right there!" A 2-meter-tall bandit with a dagger on his belt shouted in a bass voice. There were 4 other men standing beside him, and judging by their crossed-out treads, they were renegades from different villages who had banded together to form a gang. "We don't want any trouble," the grass shinobi said, stepping forward a bit. He was dressed in the standard grass Junin uniform and a black bandana with a protector, a wakizashi strapped to his back, and behind him stood 2 genin and 1 chunin. Behind his back, the chunin held a sword wrapped in a black cloth. The cloth had slipped a bit due to running, revealing a view of a beautiful hilt decorated with gold and gems. "Hey, no problem if you give us that sword over there and then you can go on your way," he grinned and grinned contentedly. "Sato. There are 10 more ordinary people behind the trees," very quietly and excitedly said to the chunin a girl who was in the team, apparently, a medic and a sensor. She was a beautiful brunette with dark eyes. She was wearing a black skirt and a vest of murky green color. "It's bad, but don't worry, Ayumi, we'll get out of this," the chunin also said quietly to his partner. He was not badly built, and had a rather peculiar appearance due to the combination of muddy green hair and dirty yellow hair. "We can handle it," the dark-haired shinobi, dressed in blue pants and a green jacket, also whispered to his partner. "I believe you, Kamiko," Ayumi said and looked at her sensei. I'm sorry, but we have to complete our task and you getting in our way is getting in our way, so please let us pass. The grass shinobi tried to resolve the conflict with the world. Don't you get it yet? We know your assignment and that you are carrying this sword as a gift to the daima of a neighboring country in honor of a recent reconciliation. How did you know that? Sato shouted at the big man. How dare you raise your tone at me, you brat? The man shouted and drew his dagger, and his henchmen drew their weapons. So, we can't avoid the fight, said the Junin sadly and drew his wakizashi. Guys, stay alert, shouted the Junin and rushed into close combat with the man, while the rest of the bandits ran at the young shinobi who were armed with kunai. The renegade from Cloud was not good with a dagger, but was well versed in the element of lightning, but his opponent had earth, so the fight was not easy. Raiden, lightning blade, the renegade shouted. His right arm was covered in lightning, and he quickly caught up with the grass shinobi. Doten, stone spike, shouted the Junin and an earth spike rapidly burst out of the ground, which was aimed at the enemy. Too late. The man, pleased with himself, shouted and sliced the spike with a lightning bolt, then swiftly approached his opponent and struck him with his hand from top to bottom. Junin tried to defend himself with a cold weapon, but it too suffered the same fate as the spike. A hand with lightning cut across the chest area and the man opened up with joy, which the team captain took advantage of. Spinning on its axis, the Junin slashed the stomach of the enemy with the stump of his wakizashi and collapsed, while the renegade, trying to hold on to his insides, fell to his knees, screaming in pain. Sensei, shouted Ayumi and opened herself up, letting the enemy hit her shoulder. The girl cried out at the sudden flash of pain and fell to the ground, and her opponent swung for one last strike, but then he was pierced by the customer's sword and fell to the ground with a wound in the heart area. Kamiko, take the teacher and Ayumi and run away from here and I'll hold them off, shouted Sato, fending off the brigand's sword strike. We won't leave you, cried Ayumi, having almost healed her shoulder, but she was spending the last crumbs of her chakra on it. Run. I'm already a dead man. I've been hit by the enemy's mental technique and my consciousness is falling to pieces, I can even feel it already, cried Sato with his last strength, while Kamiko, having already taken Sensei, pulled Ayumi behind him, stopping the bandits with a stone wall for the time being. I love you, Ayumi shouted, not noticing the tears running down her cheeks. I love you too, Sato shouted, but his speech was interrupted by the kunai with explosive seals. The green-haired man, using the ground technique as armor, jumped on the kunai, followed by several explosions, and the guy flew several meters away, badly burned but still conscious. Breathing heavily, gathering the last shreds of strength, the Chunin struggled to get to his feet. I won't let you to pass. He wheezed to the bandits and formed 7 seals using the last of his chakra, after which sharp vines burst out of the ground and pierced those in front of him. Sato then fell to the ground, coughing up blood, clinging to his receding sanity. But the technique did its job, and the light of this world went out for the young shinobi. What an asshole, shouted the brigand and kicked his dead opponent in the face. You killed so many people, you scum. The renegade shouted and swung his leg again for a kick, but there was none. Caw. The scum made a final sound, and his comrades looked at him. There was a sword sticking out of his chest, which came out of his flesh with a popping sound, and the lifeless body fell to the ground, revealing a blonde-haired guy standing with his head down. How dare you do such a thing? How? Naruto shouted furiously and raised his head sharply, and all present saw red eyes with 3 commas in each. It was the last thing the bandits saw before they died. You're back, Naruto, Madara said and turned around. What he saw shocked him. Naruto was standing in front of the entrance covered in blood. In his hand he held a bloody sword and on his shoulder was the body of an unknown man. A Sharingan with 3 tomos burned in his eyes. We need help, shouted Uzumaki and quickly ran up to Madara, throwing the bloody sword aside. What's wrong? Who is it? Madara inquired, escorting Naruto and the wounded man into one of the rooms. I got into a fight with the renegades who attacked the grass shinobi. I tried to heal him, but I couldn't do anything with him and decided to bring him here, Naruto said sadly, gently laying the shinobi's body on a special table. Go, Wash up quickly, and I'll examine him again and try to identify the problem, Uchiha said in a tone that did not tolerate objections, and Uzumaki, realizing the seriousness of the situation, ran out the door without delay. So, let's see. The old man's hands glowed with green light, and he leaned them on the body of the victim. The body is not critically injured, the burns are by no means fatal, but his vitality is rapidly diminishing. Well, it's not poison, but the arm is dying off, so why is that? Exactly. Is it possible that it's a mental attack designed to damage the brain? A mental attack that destroys a person's mind and consciousness, and if the brain doesn't work, then the whole body doesn't work. Just his consciousness gradually fades away and his body slowly dies off. Madara finished his reasoning as a wet blonde man ran into the room and approached the table. So, what's wrong with him? Said the panting Jinchuriki. He's been hit by the enemy's mental attack, it's destroying his consciousness, and if nothing is done, he'll be dead in 8 minutes. What do we do now? How can we help him? The blonde man also continued excitedly. Don't let his tissues die off, I'll be right there, Madara said and walked out of the room with quick steps, while Naruto started trying to slow down the process of cell death. 3 minutes later Madara returned. He had a small black rod in one hand and an IV filled with white liquid in his other hand. Naruto continued to treat the green-haired man while Madara put the IV in him, and when he leaned the rod against the shinobi's head, it soaked into him. What did you do? Naruto asked, removing his hands from his body. I injected Hashirama's cells into his body and mixed the remaining crumbs of his consciousness with Zetsu's. What will come of it I don't know. It's up to him now, let's leave him here, then we'll check his condition, the Uchiha replied, wiping his eyes and leaving the room. Madara, are you sure it's okay to leave him like this? The blonde man worried. We're not able to do more than that, if he survives he'll wake up in a couple of days, but in the meantime you and I are going to take care of business with you, Madara got the blonde interested. What are we going to do? First we'll rest, and then we'll talk about what happened. Okay, Naruto said tiredly and went to bed, following the Uchiha's example. The next day, after the dungeon dwellers woke up, Madara decided to have a conversation with Naruto about the murders. The Uchiha tried to keep his psyche from going astray, so he gave many examples of when killing was necessary. After this talk, Naruto was able to come to terms with killing and his life began to go back to the way it was, which was to start training. Concentrate, your chakra should be sharp and cutting. You have reached the second stage of mastering elemental chakra quickly, but it will not be easy for you here. Break up the clones and try again, Madara said as he watched the crowd of clones stand on a log in the middle of the waterfall and try to cut it. Just a little more here, shouted all of Naruto's clones and the waterfall cut in two and the remaining clones scattered. Naruto felt the fatigue of the clones and his legs gave out and he fainted. Amazing guy, mastered his native element in 2 days, is he a genius or is it just his clones? It's good that his Sharingan with 3 Tomo has awakened, now he'll be able to copy techniques quickly. When Zetsu wakes up, I'll send these two on a mission. Naruto will gain new experience and Zetsu will remember his forgotten skills, Madara thought as he laid the passed-out blonde on the bed. How are you, Zetsu? Madara asked suddenly, glancing behind him. Fine, thank you, Madara-san. Who's that? Zetsu asked. He looked like a grass shinobi except his skin was a little whiter. He looked at Naruto and his eyebrows rose upward in surprise. This is my receiver, his name is Uzumaki Naruto. He agreed to help me in my fight against the masked man, Madara explained. Yes, while I was incapacitated, a lot of interesting things happened. Why don't you tell me all about it? All right, I'll tell you all about it. Why don't you sit down first? Uchiha asked Zetsu. At his words, Zetsu sank down to his neck into the ground, and the shoots of an unknown plant moved away from him, ready to close up and protect the user from danger. Wow, you look like you've changed. Madara marveled, as Zetsu had never been able to do that before. I didn't expect it, but when I woke up, I realized I had a different forest element, and I could use some techniques and abilities, Zetsu informed him, and as proof, he sank into the ground and came out behind the old man's back in a flash. I think it's because you were put into the body of that shinobi that Naruto brought in. Zetsu was surprised at this statement, but he didn't interrupt the Uchiha and listened to Madara's entire story. Their conversation went on for quite some time. While they were talking, a stirring was heard on the bed. "Oh, you're awake, Naruto, I want you to meet Zetsu," Madara beckoned the blonde to him. "Zetsu. Nice to meet you," the light-skinned man said. "Uzumaki Naruto." Likewise, the blonde shook his outstretched hand and smiled. "So, now you've met, Naruto, I want to give you and Zetsu an assignment, but you need some work with ninjutsu, so now we'll start practicing, and Zetsu will also be familiarizing himself with his new abilities in the meantime," Uchiha announced and waited for the agreement of both of them. "But, Madara-san, don't I have to train too?" Zetsu asked, raising his eyebrows upwards in surprise, and Naruto looked at him in surprise as well. "I think with your level, you'd lose to even Naruto right now. Let's think about it logically, you know a couple of forest element techniques, you're good at hiding, you have a lot of chakra, but you don't reach the same level as Naruto, your control isn't perfect, plus you've lost all your skills in taijutsu," Zetsu criticized the Uchiha. "But, now you have a wider range of abilities, so I don't intend to let them go to waste, and if you ever get caught by an enemy, you won't fight back well, so, my clone will train you, and you will additionally develop your new forest element." Uchiha made a plan, and Naruto and Zetsu listened carefully to all aspects. "Alright, let's get started, Madara-san," Zetsu began resolutely. "Yes. Let's start training." Raising his voice interrupted Uzumaki, and the old man grinned. "Look at my eye," Madara said, starting his technique. It had been 5 days. In those 5 days, Naruto had mastered the fire element he had from Kyuubi and copied a couple techniques of different ranks from the Uchiha. He had also mastered earth and water, all with the help of a myriad of kid clones. Madara explained his quick learning of the water and earth elements by saying that if he used the forest element, he could subconsciously use the elements that made up the forest. During this time Zetsu was getting used to his new skills and his new element, as well as getting a little more physically fit, but he wasn't making much progress. And now it was time for the task at hand. "So, I told you about the assignment, so it was time for this," the old man announced, sitting on his couch, with Naruto sitting on a stump and Zetsu peeking out of the ground not far from him. "Finally, the task I've been waiting for," the Jinchuriki said excitedly, but quickly apologized for interrupting and continued to listen. "I will continue. You and Zetsu will do different missions that you will take wherever you have to, or rather you Naruto will do them, and Zetsu will collect information. After you gain experience and learn new things, you will come back here and we will talk about our further actions. I will give you 3 months to do everything, in that time you must do it all. Get out this morning, Zetsu will show you the nearest town and explain what's what, then you'll split up." Madara finished and sent them off to gather everything they needed for their journey. Naruto packed some things in the bag Zetsu had brought and put various weapons and other useful things in the pouch. Madara also brought a small bar of gold from somewhere and told Uzumaki to sell it in a jewelry store, with the proceeds he would live on for the first time. Putting everything together and strapping the sword behind his back, Naruto left the cave with Zetsu, who left his clone with Madara for further training, while the original himself went with the guy. Naruto, smiling, breathed in the fresh air he had already missed. Birds sang in the forest and the sunlight warmed his skin pleasantly. Zetsu, who was walking beside him, also involuntarily admired the nature. Zetsu lowered his cloak to his waist and caught the sun's rays with his whole body. "Zetsu, how far is it to the city and what do you need to make clear to me during our journey?" the Jinchuriki asked, adjusting the bandana that kept his overgrown hair from falling over his eyes. "Well, the nearest town, or rather, the small population, is 15 kilometers from the shelter," Zetsu replied. "I see," Naruto said and after a short pause continued, "Tell me, how did you come to work with Madara?" "I was originally created from Senju Hashirama's cells, but they were unfinished and unstable. I was getting information to Madara about what was going on in the shinobi world. When the Nine Tails attacked Hidden Leaf, I wasn't far away and decided to watch it, but I was hit by a bomb of tails that was moved by the fourth Hokage. After that I got to Madara all wounded and he put my mind in a rod and I was in a dream state, Zetsu replied thoughtfully. But, how did you know that the fox was being controlled by someone? Uzumaki asked another question. Good question. I have one feature, I can record what is happening with my eyes, zooming in and out as needed. Zetsu finished his story, jumping over a fallen tree. I see. Good, now listen, you will spend 3 months doing different missions, work and collect different information you can look for in the bar, town hall, from merchants, caravans. By evening Zetsu and Naruto reached the town. The white-skinned man was surprised that in many years, this place would turn into a luxurious city. Wow, I didn't realize that in so much time. How long has it been since the fox attacked Konoha? The green-haired man chastised himself for his absent-mindedness. 14 years, Naruto answered briefly and held out his hand to Zetsu. Yeah, that's a lot, okay, well goodbye Naruto, you can travel anywhere you want. I'll find you when Madara-san wishes to see us. So long. Shaking his hand, Zetsu went underground, covering himself with his 2 leaves. Taking a full breath, Naruto headed towards the gates of the city, setting a limit on his chakra volume. Hey kid, what do you want in our town? The guard asked. Uzumaki wanted to test his abilities on the guard and looked him in the eye. It's okay, come on in, the guard said and let the Jinchuriki into the city. The first thing Naruto did was to ask a passerby how to get to the jewelry store, mentally glad that his genjutsu had worked on the guard without any bad consequences. The blonde had sold the gold at the jewelry store and was now deciding where to go first. Without thinking long, Naruto found out the way to the barber shop. There he finally got rid of his long hair and began to look more like a human than a savage. After that he went to a clothing store. He bought himself a white t-shirt, black pants and colored sandals and a knee-length cape and immediately put on the new clothes. Now satisfied with his appearance, Naruto left to find a hotel. It had been a few days since Naruto had said goodbye to Zetsu. For starters, he decided not to rush into assignments, but to practice with ninjutsu, which he devoted the first few days to. But practicing didn't do much good, so the blonde went in search of assignments. The weather outside was beautiful, everything was fragrant, birds were singing in the crowns of the trees. Uzumaki, walking down the street, involuntarily smiled and for a moment forgot about all his problems, but, shaking his head, immediately gathered himself. The first thing he decided to do was to visit the market. Gathering his gear, Naruto went to the market, but on the way he came across a small restaurant with a strong smell of food coming from the open windows. Tempted by the pleasant aroma, Naruto decided to linger a bit longer and grab a bite to eat. Entering the restaurant, the blonde ordered a portion of his favorite ramen. When the order arrived, Uzumaki asked the waiter where he could find the head of the local market, to which the young man only shrugged his shoulders and returned to his duties. After quickly eating the noodles he had brought, Naruto headed towards the main square. But the boy was out of luck. Today was the opening of the fair and the square was crowded with commuters who couldn't help Naruto in his search. Well, come to think of it, the head of the market is unlikely to be standing at the counter, then we need to look for a building not related to the sale. There surely can ask information from knowledgeable people, decided for himself Naruto and went to look for the cherished building, making his way through the busy crowd. After an hour he found the building he was looking for, although it was a bit of a hassle. His conclusions were wrong, the building he needed was 3 steps away from the market, and the way to it was suggested by one of the vendors, who apparently knew more than the other workers, as he was already in his old age. Can you tell me if anyone is hiring guards for their caravan? Naruto asked the man who apparently ran the place. He was sitting at a desk littered with papers, but not to the man's discomfort. Aren't you too small? The man asked gruffly, heading for the carafe of water that was on the nightstand in the corner of the room. The man was rich, it was clear from the expensive clothes he wore, the large number of rings on his fingers and the brightly shining gold earring in his ear. But his flamboyant appearance didn't repel him in the least, and his pleasant face framed by his shoulder-length brown hair was trustworthy. I'm a shinobi, and for a ninja, it's not age that matters, but his abilities. Uzumaki answered him coldly and looked at him with indifferent eyes, hinting at killing him at an early age. You speak seriously and rightly, but if you are a shinobi, then how much are you capable of? Said the head of the market, sipping his water leisurely. It takes years to acquire the necessary shinobi skills, and you are so young that I doubt your abilities, the man continued, looking at the boy doubtfully. I'm ready to prove it. The blonde persisted, he didn't like to be underestimated, referring to his age. Well, I'll give you a chance, I just need more guards in order to move to the land of tea, because it is now profitable to trade there. But let's get right to the point, if you can defeat 3 of my guards, I'll take you. And I hope you know how to handle what's behind your back and not just carry a cold weapon. So, do you agree to my terms? The merchant held out his hand. I agree. Shaking his hand, the Jinchuriki said. Good, then let's go. The market owner beckoned the blonde behind him, and Naruto followed him into the basement. The bright light hit the blonde man's eyes and the hum of people filled his ears. Naruto blotted his eyes and saw people standing around the two fighting with satisfied faces and money in their hands. Naruto looked at the owner and everyone present in surprise. This is where caravan owners test their guards for fitness, and some are just betting, the man explained. Come on, it's your turn to fight, so I advise you to take off the top of your clothes or you'll get dirty. A man came up to them and took Naruto's things for safekeeping, and the half-undressed blonde stepped into the ring, as the fight between the two had already ended. Hey Kimiro, Reidi, Shibi, fight this kid. If you win, you'll get a nice raise, shouted the market owner, and in the ring came 3 more people, roughly equal in build, but still taller than the blonde. Sorry, kid, it's nothing personal, it's our job, said one of the men, and everyone froze waiting for the fight to start. It's okay, the blonde man said cheerfully and stood up. Well, I don't need a Sharingan to fight them, and I can't show it, so I'll gain experience, Naruto thought as he jumped a foot and blocked a strong kick with his foot, but suddenly he was hit right on the top of his head by a third guard and fell on the knee of one of the opponents. At the same moment, the other guard struck from the turn straight at Naruto's ribs. The guy flew a few meters away from them and fell flat on the ground. Uzumaki had underestimated the strength of his opponents, so he hadn't expected something like this. I will never underestimate my opponents again, Naruto said, getting up from the ground and taking up his stance again. Naruto attacked now, he jumped up and kicked his opponent's block with his foot, then he dodged the kick from below and kicked the other attacker in the tendon of his leg. One became incapacitated. Uzumaki attacked again, and after a 5-minute fight was able to knock out another one. The last one was put down in another 3 minutes. And there before the master stood the crumpled blonde and the beaten guards. Wow guards, Naruto said, rubbing his injured side. Wow kid, said one of the trio, and they all laughed. Very well, I accept you as a guard young man. What is your name? The master asked and Naruto smiled, but suddenly his smile was gone. My real name. It can't be called. What should I make up? What? Uzumaki thought anxiously, but his thoughts were interrupted. So what's your name? The owner of the market interjected. My name is Rei, Naruto said, the first thing that came to mind. Nice to meet you Rei, my name is Hideki Hizumaru. And this is Kimiro, Reidi and Shibi, by the way you can go and get cleaned up, Hideki said and let the 3 guards go about their business. Rei, you take over as guard, a man will be here soon to take you to a place where you can rest and get to know the others, said Hideki and held out a bundle that contained all of Uzumaki's belongings. Thank you, Hideki-san, I will do my job well, Naruto assured the head of the market. 2 minutes later the guide came, but he had to wait while Naruto's papers were being made, as he didn't have his old ones, but he put it down to the fact that they had been burned in the house. Now it was already Rei Tetsuya walking to his room. Rei was pleased that he was able to deal with the documents so quickly and easily, so he quickly fell into the role of guard. 3 days later, the caravan was on its way to the land of tea. Naruto was able to get along with the guards, some good swordsmen even helped him with his training, and there were a couple of other shinobi, but they stayed away from him. The clanking of katanas could be heard near the caravan. The blonde man was practicing again, and Reidi was helping him. Naruto had been practicing taijutsu with Shibi, but the boy was defeating the guard because Madara had taught him a lot. Kimuro emphasized ninjutsu and genjutsu, he even showed a couple of techniques to the blonde, but he didn't know that his techniques were just copied by the guy's Sharingan. But now the sound of swords striking had subsided, and once again the caravan was on its way. There was still plenty of time before arriving in the land of Chai, and the blonde decided not to waste it, but to work on himself. Naruto experimented with the element of the forest and tried to develop something new, but so far he was only good enough for a wood clone, which was much better than the shadow clone. 2 more days passed, which were especially boring for Naruto as his teachers were put on patrol or night duty, so Naruto spent his time with the fox talking about the past and the future. Uzumaki sat on the first wagon in the caravan and surveyed the surroundings. Suddenly, the ground shook a few meters away from him and a huge wall came out of it, covering the entire road. Naruto jumped to his feet in a flash and saw 3 people on the wall folding identical seals. Futon. Squall wind, the unknown men shouted and directed 3 powerful streams of wind at the caravan, which, combined into one, easily swept the first wagon. Uzumaki was thrown far into the forest, and he crashed into a tree and lost consciousness. Naruto woke up from the noise and struggled to regain his bearings. His eyes were cloudy, but he could see smoke rising from the burned trees, hear the sounds of battle and the screams of the wounded. He didn't know how long he'd been unconscious, but that was the least of his worries right now. With a quick shake of his head, the blonde reached the wagons in a couple of jumps and saw Shibi fighting 2 unknowns. Forming a Rasengan with one hand, Uzumaki jumped and brought it down on one opponent, breaking several bones before the unfortunate man passed out from the painful shock. Turning around at the sound, the other opponent let his guard down and was hit in the throat by a kunai thrown by Shibi. "Thank you, Rei, I probably wouldn't have made it on my own," the guard said after catching his breath and getting down on one knee. "Shibi, where are those shinobi who overturned the wagon?" Naruto asked excitedly and quickly, looking around. They're farther to the beginning, fighting with our shinobi guards," Shibi said and quickly ran away to the sounds of the battle in the other direction, while the blonde rushed to the right place. Naruto jumped up high with his Sharingan activated and looked at the battlefield. The opponents were standing on opposite sides of the battlefield, apparently having recently combined techniques. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice Naruto, who had created a clone in flight, and the 2 of them were folding the seals of different techniques. Kaden. Great fire destruction, Naruto spoke softly and blew one of Uchiha Madara's strongest fire techniques out of his lungs, and at the same time the clone managed to hit the ground with another technique. Doden. Stone dome. A dome erupted from the ground, protecting Naruto's allies from the sizzling fire that raged across the clearing. The clone disappeared with a pop, and Naruto, before anyone saw him, used the element of the forest and pulled himself to a safe distance with an extended wooden arm. 10 seconds later the fire show was over and everyone present turned their attention to the dispersing cloud of smoke. On the other side now stood 2 enemies. One of them was badly burned and the other only slightly, only a handful of ashes remained of the third. The 2 survivors were breathing tiredly, the lack of chakra was taking its toll. Naruto was in the same condition because he had spent a lot on those techniques. Are they still standing? Naruto asked his comrades standing next to him as he inhaled the air. How did they survive after that? Reidi exclaimed in surprise. They're weakened now, so this is our chance, Kimuro said, thinking of something. Rei, can you distract them with fire? He continued. Yes, I can, Naruto replied shortly and jumped high up, pushing himself up with chakra beforehand. Kaden. Great fireball, Naruto shouted and sent a fireball towards his enemies. Reidi, now! Shouted Kimuro and began to fold the seals, and Reidi began to sidestep the enemies as they defended themselves from the fire. Doden. Infernal swamp, Kimuro shouted and slammed his hand into the ground, the impact sending viscous mud in the direction of the bandits. What the hell? One of the bandits shouted, but immediately fell to the ground with his head cut off. The second enemy, having wasted all his chakra, could not even make an attempt to resist and drowned in the created swamp. Phew, Finally, Rady said tiredly, wiping his katana with a handkerchief. Hey, guys. How's it going in there? Shibi shouted from behind the wagon. It's all over, so we can rest. Let everyone patch up their wounds and get back in formation, we'll be moving on soon, Kimiro said. All the guards who were involved in the battle scattered to rest, and the medical staff began to treat the wounded. After 3 hours, the caravan was ready to leave again, but it was decided to stop for the night and wait for morning. The caravan was ready to leave again, but it was decided to stop for the night and wait for the morning. The night passed quickly and the caravan continued on its way. After a day, they stopped in a town, so the guards got some free time, and Naruto decided to go to the hot springs. Naruto's trip to the baths went smoothly, which the blonde man himself was very happy about, after which he went to the town square and see the sights to distract himself a bit. So the blonde walked around the city until the night, and when finally exhausted, the guy rented a hotel room and went to bed. The next day the head of the caravan announced that they would be staying for a while to fix the transportation, so Naruto had a couple more free days, and he decided to devote them to training. As he learned the aspects of genjutsu and ninjutsu with the help of Kimiro, Naruto didn't notice how the 2 days flew by. The caravan continued its journey to the land of tea, which was 3 days away. It had been 2 days since the caravan had left the city, and Naruto felt that he would soon be leaving his position as a guard. Now he was resting in the carriage after duty and giving himself to reflection. Naruto's paw. I wonder how my friends are doing in Konoha. I hadn't thought about them in a long time, and I was ashamed of them. They used to be the most important thing in my life. I was always trying to protect them from all dangers, but once Madara found me, I thought of them less and less. Have I really changed that much? What the hell am I talking about? I'm doing this to save them, and not just them, but other people in general. They're my friends just like before, so I'll protect them even at the cost of my life. This is my ninja way, to never give up and to protect my loved ones. I haven't changed, I've only grown up. But I'm still very curious, how are they doing? Are they healthy? How's my team? Is Sensei reading all his books? How's Sakura, Sasuke? Obito-sensei? How are all my other friends and acquaintances? Oh man, it's making me so depressed and melancholy that I'm even getting too distracted and sad. What if I were to drop by Konoha sometime and see how they're all doing? Not a bad idea in principle. It's decided, as soon as I get off work, I'm going to stop by the Hidden Leaf Village right away. End of Naruto's paw. Hey Ray. Suddenly the blonde was distracted from his thoughts by Kimiro's voice. What, Kim? Naruto asked tiredly and opened his right eye, staring at him. What are you going to do after we get to the city in the land of Chai? The shinobi asked, making himself comfortable on the pillow. He looked cheerful, and was probably looking forward to a quick paycheck and freedom from his duties. His brown eyes gleamed merrily in the dim lighting, and his black hair was wet and disheveled, and he was now wearing a robe, showing that he had recently washed. I don't know, I'm actually traveling. What did you want? Naruto asked, opening his other eye. My partners and I want to offer you a job, Kimiro replied slyly and squinted his eyes, and Naruto looked at him with interest, rising from his seat. Listen, while you've been here, I've been keeping an eye on you. Me and my guys need a good shinobi to do a job. And the most important thing is to make sure he's tested. You're a good fit for us, since we've fought together, I trust you, that's why I'm offering this, Kimiro explained, and Naruto thought for a moment. What kind of business do you want to do? The blonde asked incredulously, glancing at his companion. In general, my family had a scroll from a long time ago. According to my late grandfather, it said the location of a special stash, which is something important. We want to find it, but there are a couple of problems. Went to the essence of black-haired, wiping his head with a towel, and Uzumaki began to listen to him more carefully. One of the problems is that the scroll was stolen from me by one of my old buddies. He investigated everything thoroughly and stole my relic. The other problem is that the scroll is encrypted, and to decipher it you need to visit the ruins of one of the temples of an ancient clan. There is something there that will help you translate it, Kimiro said in detail. And why are you sure that your former buddy did not find this stash? Uzumaki suddenly asked. Ray, only I know how to decipher the scroll and only I know the location of the temple, the guard said with a smile on his face, and Naruto began to think hard, weighing everything he said, but his curiosity and thirst for adventure overcame his doubts. Why don't you assume that I will take you prisoner and torture you to tell me everything about this stash? The blonde man asked with a smirk, and his companion blurted out. You're not that kind of person, Ray, I can feel it. The location isn't right, and yes it's stupid. Don't worry about the merit and the reward, so if it goes well, you'll make a good living, Kim replied. Okay, I agree. Accepted Naruto's decision. Very well Ray Tetsuya, but you must not tell anyone about this, it is a very important secret, so no one must know about it. And I'm very happy to have you with us, Kimiro said cheerfully and pulled Naruto's hand for a handshake. After that, Kimiro got out of the caravan and went about his business, while the Jinchuriki went back into his thoughts. Soon the caravan reached a town in the land of Chai and the process of weeding out the guards and hiring new ones was underway. Naruto, however, was summoned to the head of the caravan upon his arrival in Kimiko's town. Kiteki was sitting at a desk in his rented office, going through his papers, signing and writing some details, his earring shining brightly in the sun, sometimes illuminating the room with sun bunnies. And no one would have disturbed his work if there had not been a knock at the door. Come in, Hizumaru said briefly, and set aside the completed sheet of paper. The door opened and a familiar face with a blonde head appeared in the opening. Hello, Kiteki-san, you summoned me. Naruto asked, taking a seat on the prepared chair. Ah, it's you, Tetsuya. Yes, I summoned you to ask about the renewal of your guard contract. During the bandit attack, you distinguished yourself and showed good behavior, the head said and looked at Naruto, waiting for a reply. I'm sorry, Kiteki-san, but my life path is taking me further, so I can't stay, Naruto explained and smiled crookedly, while Hizumaru began to write something on a piece of paper. It's good that you're following your path, I hope it leads you to the right goal, here you go, give this sheet to the girl on the way out, she'll give you your paycheck. Kiteki handed the blonde man the sheet. Thank you, Kiteki-san, for everything you've done for me, maybe I'll see you again, Naruto said with a smile and said goodbye to the head of the caravan. On his way out he gave the note to the receptionist and she handed Naruto a rather large sum of money. Naruto walked out of the building and met a trio of friends led by Kimiro. Hey guys, are you here for your paycheck too? Naruto asked and shook everyone's hands in greeting. Oh Ray, we need you, we're leaving this town in 3 days, so rest those days, and when the time is up, come to the hotel, which is near the fountain on the east side of town near the Shinobi store. Alright then, we're here for the paycheck, have fun, Kimiro said and patted Uzumaki on the shoulder. Good luck, Rady said with a smile. See you later, said Shibi and the whole company went into the office. Bye, Naruto said goodbye and went to look for hot springs. After visiting the baths, Naruto went to a clothing store, because his clothes had been damaged during the fight, and he was now wearing the uniform of a regular security guard. He bought himself black sandals, a mesh t-shirt, a dark jacket and loose pants, and walked out of the store, quite pleased with himself. On his back was a new backpack, which in addition to 2 straps fastened on the belt, Naruto also bought a pouch for weapons, and katana was mounted on his back. After that Uzumaki went to the Shinobi store and bought everything he needed, then went to the hotel to get a room and rest. The appointed time has arrived, and already Naruto is talking to Kimiro, Rady, and Shibi in their room. They are discussing a plan of action, the first point of which is to retrieve the scroll. Alright, we're now in Kimiko's town, it's a short distance to our destination. Timi's house is on the border of the country, so it shouldn't be hard to get there, but how do we get the scroll? He's probably backed up and hired guards, so we're in for a rough time. After we get the scroll, we'll go straight to the temple. So, Tetsuya, you are ready and so are we, so let's go now, Kim finished, and the others just shook their heads and started to pack. After half a day, the team of 4 was almost close to the trader's lair, so they stopped running and took a break. Naruto, on the other hand, watched Shibi's somewhat incomprehensible behavior. He was looking around, running his eyes, crunching the bones of his arm and wiping sweat from his face, but Uzumaki didn't pay much attention to it and decided to have a snack. After a short rest, they traveled onward, checking their gear before doing so. They made their way as quietly as possible along the forest towards the manor. There were no guards in sight, and that started to alarm Uzumaki as they made their way through the forest and saw the large house. The sun was already starting to set and in an hour it would be dark, so the four shinobi decided to wait until nightfall to act easier, but things don't always go according to plan. Suddenly there was a great rumble from behind and Naruto was thrown aside by the explosion, but he managed to group himself and land on his feet. The others were out of sight, and when the dust cleared, Uzumaki saw a man mostly in black clothing. He had a large zanbato hanging behind his back and wore arm cuffs on his hands. His face was covered by a scarf and only his brown eyes were visible. He was wearing a black bandana on his head and in it was a crossed-out stone protector. I shouldn't let him close, I'll try to wound him with something quick, maybe it will work and I won't have to exert myself too much, thought Uzumaki and quickly put the 6 seals together. Futon. Wind blades, then rushed towards the enemy, sharply waving his arms cross to cross, from which broke off streams of dense cutting wind, then they with rapid speed rushed to the enemy. You know the techniques. A shinobi suddenly spoke in a cold voice over Naruto's ear. Uzumaki, with eyes big with surprise, turned around sharply, pulling his katana out of its sheath and striking towards the owner of the voice. There was a clang of metal, and Naruto saw the huge cleaver block the blow of a small needle. You're fast, the enemy complimented, and immediately the shinobi swung his katana to the side and swung the flat of his sword at his body, sending the Jinchuriki flying about 7 meters away and crashing into a tree, which he safely felled. With a groan, Naruto got to his feet and put a hand on his shoulder, then with a sharp movement he righted it back into place. Gritting his teeth, Uzumaki folded the seals and then his hand glowed with a green light. He put it to his shoulder and stood there for a couple seconds without moving, while his opponent looked at it and did nothing. Are you done? The enemy asked sarcastically and took hold of the zanbato comfortably and threw Naruto's katana with his other hand. Uzumaki raised an eyebrow in surprise, but still picked up the katana and stood. Suddenly, those present heard a loud explosion nearby, and the renegade stone man grinned. What are you grinning about? The blonde shouted, and the shinobi pointed his sword in his direction. Some of your friends are already dead, because that's where our commander went, Naruto's opponent said with amused gloating. You're next, shouted the enemy, making a zanbato strike at breakneck speed. The clang of metal sounded again and the former stone shinobi saw his strike stopped and scarlet eyes with 3 commas in each stared back at him. Those eyes. The renegade remembered something. Sorry, now you're going to have to be killed, Naruto said with flashing eyes. Even though you have those eyes, you're still going to lose, the swordsman regained his composure. Now I'm fighting for real, said Naruto and removed the chakra block, mixing with his chakra, the fox's chakra. Wow, you're not as weak as you look. The enemy was confused again. Let's check it out, said Naruto and rushed into the fight. The clang of metal continued for 5 minutes, after which Uzumaki's katana broke and now Naruto fought with only techniques and throwing weapons. You've been holding your own against me for about 10 minutes without your needle, on one taijutsu. Worthy of respect, the renegade said, breathing in air. He stood 5 meters away from the blonde, who was already bruised in some places. The swordsman himself was burned in several places and his leg was bleeding. Naruto tried to enter his opponent in genjutsu, to which the renegade stated that he had no chakra channels in his head. Now I will use all my techniques, Naruto said and formed a series of seals, then exhaled his strongest fire technique, but his opponent defended himself with an earth technique. As soon as the stone wall collapsed, a blond man with a Rasengan in his hand flew at the swordsman, but his opponent made a sharp lunge and cut Naruto in half with his sword. Poof! There was a sound, and the blonde dispersed in a puff of smoke. A clone. A thought flashed through the enemy's mind, but at the same instant he heard footsteps behind him and closed in on the zanbato. The Rasengan met the sword obstacle and an explosion erupted, followed by the mangled sword flying off to one side and its wielder to the other. The renegade landed on his feet, but was immediately kicked in the head and flew a couple of meters away, crashing into a tree just like Uzumaki. The renegade was less fortunate than the Jinchuriki, because a splinter from a limb was sticking out of his chest, and he was coughing up blood. Naruto moved closer to him to make sure he was going to die, but the dying man moved his lips and Naruto leaned closer to him to hear what was being said. "Say it louder," Uzumaki demanded and leaned in harder. "Cats," the lips whispered, followed by an explosion. A little earlier, Kimiro was breathing heavily, leaning over the corpse of his enemy. His clothes were torn in some places, and through the holes on the man's body were visible bruises and cuts. "Oh, we have to find the others and help them," Kim said, not knowing who in turn to leave, but he was stopped by a familiar voice. "Kimiro," Reidi said quietly, coming out of the nearby bushes. "Reidi, you're alive. Did you see Shibi anywhere?" Kimiro asked at once. He died in my arms. He managed to defeat his opponent before, but he poisoned him with something and then he died. I was lucky, I got a weak one, but I was a mess too. I just didn't have time to help him," Reidi said sadly and bowed his head. "Timi would be responsible for his death. It's okay, you did your best. Now we have to find Rei," Kimiro said firmly. Suddenly there was an explosion nearby and they went there as fast as they could. There was a loud explosion, and Kimiro and Reidi hurried to the center of the event. In a minute, they were there, and they saw the crushed clearing, the fallen trees, and the crater from the explosion. Not far from it all lay a large Zanbato that was very wrinkled and bent beyond belief. No one was around, and that alarmed Kimiro more than ever. "Boo!" shouted Naruto, appearing abruptly in front of them. "Ah! Damn you, Blondie!" Reidi shouted hysterically and grabbed the spot where his heart was located, while Kimiro only sighed in relief. "Phew, good thing you're alive. What was that explosion?" Reidi asked calmly already, while Kimiro regarded the worthless Zanbato. "I was fighting a swordsman who was pretty strong and crazy. He had explosive seals around him, and when I was fighting him, I caught the tip of the seal, so I sent a clone to him and he killed himself." "Where's Shibi?" Naruto asked, looking one way and another. "He died," Kimiro said shortly and stared at the ground, very saddened by his friend's death. "We're glad you're safe, but we have to hurry. Timi might escape and Shibi's death would be in vain," Kimiro continued firmly and they set off towards the mansion. That same day in Hidden Leaf, Chidori Senbon, the black-haired boy shouted and the range filled with the cry of a flock of birds and all the targets were hit in 10. "Well done, Sasuke." Kakashi didn't even think of that, but he can make a wolf out of Chidori, said a black-haired man with beautiful features with orange glasses on his eyes. "Well, Kakashi-sensei is also talented. After all, you said, Uncle Obito, that he created this technique during the war when he was younger than me. I should try to do something like that, though. This technique has a lot of potential," the Uchiha said and deactivated the Sharingan. "Yes, there were many battles during the war where this technique was heard," another member of the Uchiha clan recalled mischievously. "I've been meaning to ask." Sasuke began with a pause, and then continued. "Why do you wear those orange glasses?" He finally said. "Ah, it's a habit of mine since childhood. In fact, from my side I see normally, that is, I see the world as it is, and not in orange color. My enemies almost always don't notice that I have my Sharingan activated because of my glasses and that gives me an advantage over them," Obito enlightened his relative. "I think you were going somewhere. Like to meet up with your former teammates," Sasuke reminded him, and Obito opened his eyes wide, even under his glasses. Shit. Kakashi's gonna cry again, and Rin's gonna back him up. I'm screwed," Obito said in a dejected voice, and Sasuke only smiled. "Thanks for reminding me, nephew, I'll be off," shouted goodbye Obito and disappeared from sight, and the young brunette remained still training in the clearing. At the same moment, at range number 6, a great rumble is heard in the clearing, and large chunks of rocks and remnants of trees fly from the epicenter of the noise. Near this carnage, a blonde woman with large breasts and a diamond-shaped mark on her forehead stands and watches what is happening. Her student is practicing the taijutsu she learned from her sensei, and the training was about to come to an end. "Not bad," Sakura, you're learning fast, you're a dangerous opponent in close combat now, Tsunade said, but she didn't stop there, and your medical skills are excellent, but you need more practice, so you should work at our hospital, the Konoha Hokage summarized. Hi, Tsunade-sama, the student, mostly dressed in pink to match her short pink hair, said. I wanted to tell you, your mace you asked for as a reward is ready. The Akamichi clan did a good job on it after you rescued Choji on one of their missions together. You can pick it up anytime you want and practice with it instead of using it as an improvised material, the Hokage informed her ward. Fine, I'll pick her up as soon as possible and continue training, Haruno said with a huff, clenching her hand into a fist. Don't overwork yourself, the Hokage said, and she and Haruno went about their business. The events at the Timi mansion. The team of three fought Timi's minions for over half an hour, but they were weaker than the former, so the trio dealt with them more quickly. Timi himself was fighting Kimiro and losing to him, with Reidi and the blonde man covering his rear. Soon Kimiro lunged and delivered a stabbing blow with his kunai to the area of his opponent's chest, and scarlet blood spilled onto the ground. Timi fell to the ground, coughing and expectorating scarlet clots, and Kimiro began to talk to him. Naruto couldn't hear the conversation, but he guessed what the conversation might be about. After a little dialogue, Timi passed away and Kimiro got up from his knees and, calling his co-commanders with him, went to the surviving part of the house. Behind the painting was a safe, and Kimiro took all the contents from there, after which the entire trio left the scene, remembering to burn all the bodies beforehand. The next morning Naruto woke up on a bed in a small room that was modestly furnished with basic necessities. With a strain, Uzumaki got out of bed and stretched his aching muscles before going for an invigorating shower. Then he pulled some spare clothes out of his backpack and rejoiced deeply at his foresight. Once he was dressed, the blonde went down to the first floor and checked into the hotel. The receptionist told him where his companions were and he headed to the nearest cafe where he met up with Kimiro and Reidi. Good morning, Blondie, Reidi said hello, barely able to tear himself away from his order. Hey, Ray, how are you feeling? Kim asked, reading some notes. Hey, guys. I'm feeling pretty good. What happened yesterday? Uzumaki tried to remember, but after leaving Timi's house, his memory was failing. You passed out last night while healing our wounds, you must have used up a lot of chakra, Reidi suggested, finishing his food. It's clear, nothing, when you fully expend chakra it increases. Waiter. Naruto cheerfully called out to the cafeteria worker, and then ordered his breakfast and was now enjoying his meal. After taking a bite, Uzumaki watched the actions of Kimiro, who had taken out a ruler and was drawing something on a map, with a compass lying next to it. What are you doing, Kim? Naruto asked. I'm finding the approximate location of the temple where we can get the decipherment of the scroll, Kimiro replied. But you said you knew where it was. Naruto asked in surprise, raising his eyebrows upward. Well, I know where it's located roughly, but it's worth it to be 100% sure. Don't worry, Ray, it's fine. Kimiro scratched the back of his head with a smile, while Reidi ordered his dessert. All right, have you figured out where this place is yet? Rubbing his temples, Naruto spoke. Sure, we're leaving in an hour so we should stock up on what we need, Kim said, after Naruto asked the meeting place and headed to the weapons store. Uzumaki remembered that his katana was broken and wanted to buy a new one, but for some reason he changed his mind. Instead he bought kunai and shurikens, as well as smoke bombs and explosive seals. Naruto bought battle pills with different properties just in case. After arming himself, the blonde returned to his room and gathered the necessary items into his backpack before heading to the designated location. The team traveled north to a location near the Fire Country. The shinobi walked for about 4 days and finally reached a beautiful place with a large shimmering waterfall. We'll spend the night here, Kimiro said briefly and threw his belongings on the ground, followed by the others. How much longer do we have to walk? Reidi asked, and Naruto went to look at the view from the hill without going into details of their journey. Not long at all, if we walk like before, we'll be there in a couple hours, Kim answered, digging into his backpack. I'll go and set up the tent, Reidi said and went to look for a flat spot. Kimiro decided not to waste time and went to make a fire. Once the fire was going, the two friends started to prepare dinner, but Naruto still didn't show up. What do you think is in that stash we're looking for? Reidi asked, rubbing his eyes as the smoke changed direction. I don't know, but I hope we didn't come all this way for nothing, Kimiro replied, and he unsealed a pot from the scroll, then put it on the fire and poured water into it. It was nearing sunset, and from the hill where Uzumaki was standing, there was a beautiful view of the clearing that had turned red due to the glow of the sun. The view was mesmerizing and hypnotizing. The warm wind ruffled the young man's hair, soothing and carrying away all sorrows and hardships into the distance. Naruto stood still for a few minutes with his eyes closed, and then sat down on the grass and began to meditate. After a short meditation, he entered his subconscious mind, where a large cage appeared in front of him. HRR. 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 There was a whimpering sound coming from the depths of this cage. Naruto walked closer to the cage and sat down on what appeared to be a beautiful throne. Hello Kyuubi, Naruto said loudly, putting his foot on his leg. The snoring stopped and there was a stirring. Two scarlet eyes with vertical pupils lit up in the darkness and then stared at the newcomer. Oh, it's you, Naruto. The nine-tailed man muttered in a low voice, and the cage lit up, revealing the rest of the Bijuu's body. Were you expecting someone else? Naruto asked wistfully and looked around. Just your schizophrenia, the fox said flatly. My schizophrenia is you, the blonde attacked again. And you are my insolent alarm clock, surprised the fox. And why insolent? Uzumaki did not understand. Yes, because you come, wake up, take the power, show off leaving here and everything repeats again, listed the nine-tailed one, curling his tails. I see you want something, Naruto suggested. Well, I'm sitting here, I haven't fought anyone for so long, and I don't remember walking on the grass. Remembering the past, the fox said, rolling his eyes. Suddenly his cage became even bigger, and in place of the cushions there was a clearing. A warm breeze blew, his subconsciousness began to light up something like a miniature sun. Here's a piece of your wish, Uzumaki said, and Kyuubi looked around and rolled around in the clearing. Wow, good, it's been a long time since I've been this cool, thanks, the fox thanked the young man in a satisfied voice. Come on, it's not hard for me, and it's interesting to watch the strongest Biju at times like this. Naruto smiled. How are you doing in the outside world? Kyuubi switched the subject. I'm fine, Madara let me out of the asylum, and now I'm looking for some treasure from Senju's time with some people I know, but we have to work hard to find it. Kyuubi was surprised by this turn of events and began to ask for more details. Their conversation had been going on for a considerable amount of time, and was nearing its logical end. Okay, Kyuubi, Uzumaki said and snapped his fingers, at which time several things happened. Naruto disappeared, the clearing and other bonuses also disappeared, and the pillows returned. Dude, the fox said with a smirk into the void and turned his back to the cage. Naruto opened his eyes and noticed that the sun's disk had not yet disappeared over the horizon, so he decided to sit for a while longer and admire the view. After 10 minutes, the sun had set and the world around him had finally fallen into darkness, so Naruto set off towards the camp. It took him a little while to get there, but it was already getting dark and the stars in the sky were appearing. Uzumaki found Kimiro and Reidi at the campfire, munching away at the concoction cooking over the fire. Hey, Rei, we left you some dinner, Reidi informed him and went back to eating the delicacy. Thanks, I'll try it now. Naruto washed his hands at the waterfall and returned to the fire. The food turned out to be delicious, and the satisfied blonde man gobbled it down with a great appetite. At this rate, dinner was over, and it was time to go to bed. All right, I'll take over now, then you, Reidi, and then Rei, Kimiro commanded, but Naruto objected. No, I'll be on duty all night, I don't want to sleep anyway, and I wanted to practice at the same time. But how are you going to stand watch if you're going to train? Reidi asked with a smile. I will. The blonde raised his voice and folded his hands into a single seal. Poof. 5 Uzumaki clones appeared out of the smoke, of which 4 of them snapped to the 4 sides with great speed. So much chakra wasted. What's the fifth one for then? Rady asked, scratching the back of his head. If we're attacked, he'll let you know, Naruto announced, and in one leap he disappeared into the thicket. That was fast, Kimuro remarked. Okay, tomorrow's going to be a fun day, I'm going to sleep, Rady yawned and climbed into the tent. Me too, Kim climbed in after him. Naruto was practicing behind the hill where he was watching the sunset. Uzumaki was honing his forest elemental and experimenting with creating a new technique. He already had an idea on how to create it. Finally, after 2 hours, he had it. He folded his brushes into a lock, and in front of him, wide sheets of wood burst out of the ground from both sides at the same time, joining in the center and forming a dome. It was a technique for protection. Wow, Naruto said as he walked around the structure from all sides. He even climbed up on it and decided to test its strength. Rasengan, Naruto shouted and there was an explosion. When the smoke cleared, Naruto found that the dent was smaller than usual, the technique hadn't pierced the dome all the way through. This Naruto was pleasantly surprised by, but he didn't stop there. Uzumaki created another dome and breathed on it with the fire technique. The effect was pleasant, the fire also failed to do the expected harm, which Naruto was immensely pleased about. Uzumaki, in order not to leave any traces of his presence, pulled the dome under the ground with the earth technique. Here we go. Uzumaki shook himself off and went to camp. The new day promised to be interesting. The next day the team woke up with the first rays of the sun. Rady made breakfast and everyone had a friendly meal before packing up and heading out. Their route was rather confusing and winding, because they had to go around cliffs and rocks, so they didn't get to the right place until lunchtime. We're here, Kimuro announced briefly, and the others looked up at the old building. It was a small house, tastefully made, but it looked like it was about to fall apart. Another notable thing was that the place where clan crests were usually placed was empty, which confused Uzumaki. Whose temple is this, or rather, hut? Rady asked with a chuckle as they moved towards the house. I don't know, and who cares, the most important thing right now is to find the scroll, Kimuro reluctantly answered and kicked the door open with his foot. Everyone walked into the room, which was filled with dust from the fall of the door. Ahem, ahem. The people present began to cough. Naruto clapped his hands together, using the wind technique, which sent a wave of air in all directions, cleansing the room. And here I thought we were all going to die, Rady replied sarcastically as always. Everyone looked around and saw that the room was completely empty, a fact that stunned everyone except the leader of the team. What now, Kimuro? There's nothing here. The blonde asked doomedly and looked at the guide. Kimuro only hummed and walked to the middle of the room, then squatted down and started tapping on the boards. After crawling around for about 2 minutes and finding a board that made a more resounding sound, Kimuro said. Ray, punch the floor here with that ball you're creating. Kimuro pointed to the spot and Naruto created a Rasengan and hit the boards with it. The sound of boards falling down and a huge cloud of dust proved that Uzumaki had hit it right. As soon as the dust cleared, everyone could see that the ladder for the descent the blonde had broken through along with the planks and now he had to jump down there. Yes, he did, I've always been amazed at the power of that ball, Rady grinned. Let's go, Kimuro said briefly and seriously again and jumped into the hole. Naruto immediately jumped after him without a word. Who's listening to me? Rady asked to himself and followed. Kimuro and Naruto found torches and lit them, then they looked at the size of this basement. The whole trio stood in a huge room that was 20 meters high and 15 wide. Why did they have to build such a large room? Naruto asked, while Kimuro tried to find a way out, but stopped to answer. It's so that if the enemy infiltrated, this house upstairs would collapse and be buried here. It looks like something important and most likely fragile is in here. What makes you think that? Uzumaki asked, stepping up to follow Kimuro. Look, shouted Rady and pointed his finger in the direction. The blonde took a couple steps in the indicated direction, lighting up the space. It's. Rady began. Masks. Kimuro finished. The wall in front of them was hung with many different masks with both intimidating grins and evil smirks. Masks. Here. Underground. Why? Naruto asked with great surprise, walking along the wall and examining them all. I don't know any more than you do, Tetsuya, so there's no point in asking me anything, Kimura warned. I wonder what they're for. Naruto reached for one of them. Stop! Shouted Kimura and intercepted the blonde's arm with great speed. They're just masks, Uzumaki said in bewilderment and confusion. You shouldn't touch something that looks very strange, especially if it belongs to some ancient clan. Kimura said in a cautionary tone and let go of Uzumaki's hand. Okay, I get it. The blonde looked away. Alright, let's move on. Everyone walked a little more and saw a door. Kimura walked closer and pulled the handle. A nasty creak of rusty hinges rattled throughout the dungeon. The team entered the room and all they saw was a table, and on it lay a medium-sized scroll. Here, this is what we need, now all I have to do is decipher it and we'll know where the hiding place is. You can wait here if you want, Kimura offered, to which Reidi shook his head negatively. I'll go outside, I realized when we came in that I can't stand these dungeons, Reidi said and ran back inside. I'll just look at the masks, I won't touch anything, Uzumaki warned and walked out of the room, lighting his way with a torch and heading towards the faces. Kimura's paw. Yeah, this cipher is a lot harder than I thought it would be. Well, if I substitute this here and this for the end of that, it works out. I'm also worried about what's at the entrance. What are these masks for? Maybe it's part of some kind of ritual. My gut feeling is that they are artifacts, but the risk is too great. You might accidentally call on some gods or worse, Shinigami, and your life will be spared. Okay, that clears things up, just a third left to decipher, and we'll finally leave this place. End POV Kimura. Naruto's POV. PFF'd. These masks are incomprehensible. Is that why I care so much? Hey, if I have to admit it, I want one of those. If that's what Kimura said, then they probably have some sort of properties. Once he finishes deciphering and we leave this place, I'll ask him to give me a map with the specified location of this temple. I will then ask Zetsu to dig me up something about this place. I'll have to talk to Madara some more later. End of Naruto's POV. The door creaked nastily again, and Naruto saw the approaching reflections of a torchlight. Uzumaki stepped away from the masks and took his torch in his other hand. After illuminating a larger perimeter for himself, Naruto saw a satisfied Kimura. I see everything went well. The blonde smiled, and Kimura shook his head and suggested they hurry and find Reidi. As they walked to the exit, Naruto noticed a large stone door that only had a hole for his hand. What kind of door is that, Kim? Uzumaki asked interestedly, about to turn towards the mysterious door, but Kimura's hand rested on his shoulder. It's a waste of time, this door will only open to someone who has the blood of this clan in his veins, answered Kimura, and they went back on the same path. The two shinobi used chakra to run up the wall and into the temple, and then they went outside. Reidi was sleeping peacefully in the shade of a tree, his backpack tucked under his head and apparently having one of his pleasant dreams. But he was prevented from having a nice dream by two very sneaky people. Kimura took a flask of water from Naruto and gently splashed the contents into his comrade's face. A scream could be heard throughout the forest, and after that came the crude words that described the inner and outer worlds of Naruto and Kimura. The two shinobi tried to calm the heated Reidi for a long time, and then began to discuss future business. So, Kimura, what did you find out? Reidi grumbled, shaking out his wet hair. To begin with, I managed to decipher the scroll and I've already looked at the location of the cache on the map. You have no idea where it is, Kimura said, intrigued. Kim, don't stall, talk closer to the point, Uzumaki said excitedly, and Reidi shook his head in agreement. Alright. This place is located right where we stayed for the night, Kimura revealed the secret. You mean by the waterfall? Reidi asked, misunderstanding. That's right, but not in the waterfall, but at the bottom of the pond next to it. Kimura clarified, looking at the scroll again. Then what are we waiting for? Reidi asked in an excited voice. I wanted to enlighten you first, but you're as restless as ever. Kimura rubbed his eyes and put the scroll in his pocket. Let's go. The man threw shortly, and everyone immediately disappeared from the clearing, jumping with great speed. This time the shinobi reached the waterfall very quickly and were already standing on the bank. "We'll have to dive," Kimiro said and took off his backpack, and the others followed suit. "I'll create a clone to watch our stuff while we're gone," decided Uzumaki and performed shadow cloning. "Great idea, now I'll dive in and if I find a passage, I'll swim out and let you know," Kimiro suggested as he took off his outer clothes. "Well, I'm off." Kimiro took a couple steps and jumped into the water. After half a minute he swam out, held his breath and dove in again. After the same amount of time he surfaced again and waved his hand and called out. Naruto and Reidi stripped half undressed and dived in after him. Naruto swam behind Kimiro and saw a dark tunnel entrance. Moving his arms quickly, Naruto swam into it and then swam down the dark corridor. After 10 seconds, he finally surfaced and was given a hand by Kimiro to pull him out of the water. "Where are we?" Naruto asked and shook his head to shake off the water droplets. "It looks like we're in a cave, but I can't see anything." Squinting his eyes, Kimiro said. Naruto created a Rasengan and the chakra illuminated the surrounding space. "Yeah, your technique is good for a lot of things, it's amazing how useful it is," Reidi said and saw a torch off to the side. Kaden, small stream of flame. Reidi, small stream of fire, blew on the stick and it caught fire. "Well, we've made the torch, now all we have to do is walk through the cave and the cache is ours," Kim said cheerfully and patted his partner on the shoulder. Taking the torch from Reidi's hands, Kimiro headed deep into the cave and the others followed him. They walked for about 15 minutes, and then they saw a large stone door. Kimiro handed the torch to Naruto and walked right up to the door. Before Uzumaki knew it, Kimiro had already started folding the seals. Finishing his task, Kim put a glowing hand to the door and the light seemed to soak into it. 10 seconds passed and there was a muffled rumble of the door being pulled aside. The shinobi entered the room and lit the other torches. The room was fully illuminated, and those present saw several shelves of scrolls and a table with a small stack of papers on it, as well as 2 chests and a wall hung with weapons and armor. Kimiro walked over to the stack of papers and started reading them. Reidi went to check the chests, and Naruto walked over to the weapons. Uzumaki saw a lever behind the armor and activated it. The wall shuddered and moved aside and everyone present walked to the entrance. "Is that a sword?" Reidi asked incomprehensibly and walked into the room. In front of him stood a long, man-sized sword with a broad blade sharpened on both sides. "It's not bad," Reidi said admiringly, and took hold of the handle and tried to pull it out, but it wouldn't budge. "What's the matter? It won't come out." Reidi tried pulling with both hands, but it didn't work. Only then did everyone see a sign written in an unknown language above the sword. Naruto and Reidi tried to make out what was written, but Kimiro just hummed. "All right, whatever, I'll go see what's in the chests," Reidi said and ran back. "Rei," Kimiro turned to Naruto, "if you pull out that sword, I'll give it to you, even though it's a relic of my clan," Kimiro said seriously and Uzumaki nodded. Naruto walked over to the sword, sighed, took hold of the hilt and pulled it out of the ground with ease. "Kimiro, I did it." Uzumaki cheered, holding the sword in one hand, and Kim smirked again. "I can take it back now, can't I?" "Yes," the man replied briefly and got ready to leave. "What does the plaque say?" "You got it." Uzumaki looked slyly at Kimiro. "Yes, I understand. It says, only he who knows the forest will take it," Kimiro informed him. "Forest?" Uzumaki said and asked another question, "What clan are you from, Kimiro?" My name is Kimiro Senju," said the man and turned his head towards Uzumaki. "Senju?" With huge eyes, Uzumaki interrogated. "Yes, I'm a descendant of Senju Hashirama, and this is his hideout," enlightened Kimiro. "Wow. And you have the element of the forest?" Naruto asked, looking at the man with surprised eyes. "Yes, but I'm not the only one." Kimiro glanced at Uzumaki, but avoided the subject. "Keep the sword, and now let's go to Reidi." Kim turned around, but Naruto stopped him. "How am I supposed to wear it?" Uzumaki looked questioningly at Senju. "Oh, I forgot." Kim slapped himself cheerfully on the forehead and touched the sword with one hand and the blonde's hand with the other. The sword disappeared and a seal in the form of a circle with symbols formed on the Jinchuriki's arm. Naruto only blinked in surprise as he looked at the pattern. Now, if you need a sword, just pour chakra into the seal and that's it, Kimiro said and was about to leave again, but he was stopped again by Uzumaki. Whose temple was that where the masks were? And where is it located on the map? The blonde asked, somehow sure that Kimiro knew the answer. Shit, Blondie, here's the decrypted scroll, it's all there, now let's go divide the loot. Senju finished and they left the room. Naruto and Kimiro left the secret room and Senju went to the table to finish what he hadn't read, while Naruto sat down in a chair to think it over. While Senju was fiddling with the notes and Uzumaki was thinking, Reidi was laying out what was in the chests on the floor. Jewelry, gold, silver, books, scrolls, and a few chains with unusual stones were visible on the floor. Reidi cautiously looked at what he found and tried to figure out what the necklaces were made of. It's not an emerald, but the color is green, even the texture is different, but this one is a different color altogether. Reidi reasoned aloud as he next examined the unusual jewelry one by one. Naruto and Kimiro broke away from their business, stepping closer. Kimiro took one of the scrolls and began to read, while Naruto looked at one of the necklaces. It looks like it's crystallized chakra. It belongs to Hashirama Senju. Kim said after finishing reading. How do you come to such conclusions, Kim? Naruto asked, and Senju silently pointed to the scroll he was reading. This necklace contains healing chakra, that's why it's green, it speeds up regeneration. Kim began and took another piece of jewelry in his hand. This one helps you use the forest element better, and the techniques are much stronger. He showed Senju a piece of jewelry made of wood, but it was harder than metal. This one is blue in color and increases your chakra reserves. Senju showed him and put it on himself. He gave the wooden one to Naruto and the green one to Reidi. Why didn't you take the wooden one, Kimiro? You're Senju after all, Reidi said, looking questioningly at both shinobi. I'll explain it to you later. Kimiro waved it off and went to the unread scroll. After 2 hours, the inspection was over and now Uzumaki was mentally listing everything he had gotten during this adventure. Naruto's POV. So, I got some really good stuff from this treasure trove, even a relic of the Senju clan. I never thought Kimiro would be one of Hashirama's descendants, and he also has the element of the forest, no wonder he handled the head of the guard during the battle at Timi's house. I wonder how strong he is. Oh well. Now I have a couple of scrolls with techniques, a necklace that improves the forest element, a large sword of the first Hokage, gold, and a few other expensive items that are made of noble metals. Also Kimiro gave me a deciphered scroll, I'll be sure to study the masked temple later. Hey, this trek has opened up new mysteries, questions, answers, and possibilities. I now know about a couple of techniques that Madara should teach me the next time we meet. Well, now I'll have to look for quests again, let's see where fate takes me now. End of Naruto's POV. The trio had finally emerged from the secret place, and now they were all standing near the waterfall. So, Rei, where are you going to go now? Kimiro asked, zipping up his backpack. I guess I'll go look for quests. The blonde replied nonchalantly and looked at the water. Where are you going, Kim? Naruto also asked and looked questioningly at Senju. To Konoha, Senju answered briefly and slung his backpack on his shoulder while Reidi stood beside him. Konoha. But why? The blonde almost shouted, his eyes bulging. The first Hokage in the scroll wanted the Senju to live in Konoha and protect it from harm, just as Hashirama had done when he was alive. Now I think we'll become shinobi of the leaf. Senju, after some thought, took off his backpack and began rummaging through it. After rummaging around a bit, he pulled out a book and tossed it to the blonde man. What's in it? Naruto asked in surprise. It contains information about shinobi criminals who are rewarded on the black market. The black market points are also in the book, Kimiro explained, while Reidi was looking at the map, trying to figure out which way to go to get to Konoha. But why did you give this to me? Naruto asked, holding the gift in his hands. Tetsuya. It's just that you're a strong shinobi and something tells me that you're going to get even stronger. So, you will meet many enemies on your way and if you defeat them, you can get a lot of money for it. You just have to hand over the corpses and that's it. So, it's all in your hands. Take care of yourself. Kimiro held out his hand in farewell, and the blonde shook it firmly before saying goodbye to Reidi as well. Senju and his partner headed through the forest towards Konoha. Before leaving, they gave Uzumaki directions to the nearest town and advised him to get a map. Uzumaki had been making his way through the dense trees for half a day now, and it was starting to get dark, but that didn't stop the brave shinobi. Naruto scolded Reidi for showing the way, but he wasn't a very good mapmaker. Jumping over a large fallen tree trunk, Uzumaki activated his Sharingan and the world around him became brighter. Jinchuriki was lucky though. 2 hours later he came to a small town, but guards stood in his way. "Who are you and why have you come to our town?" One of the guards asked a question. "I'm just a lost traveler looking for a place to stay and a place to replenish my supplies," Naruto said calmly and warmly and looked at the guards. "It's clear, okay, come on in," said the second guard, yawning tiredly, but the first of them wanted to stop him, but the look of the second one let him know who was in charge. "Thank you," the blonde man said politely and entered the town. There were lanterns burning in the town and lighting the way. After walking around the town for a bit, Uzumaki found an inn and got a room. The next day Naruto left the village and even remembered to buy a map, and he exchanged the jewelry for money and bought himself a wakizashi, just in case, which he fastened horizontally on his belt. Now Uzumaki headed to the largest of the nearby cities to find a bigger and more interesting assignment. The destination was about 3 days away, so Naruto decided that it wouldn't hurt to learn how to use his new huge sword. On the second day of the journey, he found a convenient clearing to practice in and unsealed the sword. The blonde man looked it over from every angle and began to practice. He created a large pack of tree clones with swords and gave the order to attack him. The swarm of spears first attacked one at a time, then the whole bunch, and then with activated Sharingans, and after 2 hours of hard fighting, Blondine was all battered and in some places with deep cuts. Now he stood with his Sharingan activated and his sword half stuck in the ground. All the clones had been destroyed. Naruto grimaced in pain and ran Kyuubi's chakra through his body, speeding up regeneration, and then he folded a few seals and began to heal. Once rehabilitated, Uzumaki set off on his journey. As he walked, there were many thoughts in his head. Pa of Naruto. Hey, a bit unaccustomed with such a huge thing, but this sword is quite handy to use. It's sharp even though it's been standing for many years. It looks like it was made with a special technique and a special metal. I was lucky to have it. Come to think of it, where could the same 7 great swords of mist have come from? I wish I knew more about it, but for now, time is short and I have to spend it gaining experience. Now all that's left is to learn the new forest techniques and I can safely complete the missions. The end of Naruto's POV. By the blonde man's standards he should have reached the city in half a day, so he stopped and turned deep into the forest. After quite a distance from the road, Uzumaki came to a clearing and started learning new techniques from the scrolls. 7 hours later. After learning the forest techniques, Naruto decided to try them out on his own clones. He created 100 shadow copies and ordered them to attack. All the clones just rushed to the original as Naruto himself had already applied the technique. Mokuten, the birth of the wood forest, Naruto shouted after he folded the seals. Almost the entire clearing was filled with a forest that the blonde was able to control. The Jinchuriki had destroyed many of his clones with this technique, but he didn't stop there. Naruto began to fold the seals again. Mokuten, palm. A huge wooden palm burst out of the ground to meet the clones, which was also controllable and destroyed the rest of the clones. Phew, useful techniques. Uzumaki felt that chakra was scarce, but still folded the seals of the earth elemental. Doden, swamp. All the wooden structures were dragged underground and everything became as before, and the blonde fainted in the middle of the clearing. Jinchuriki appeared in his subconscious next to the fox's cage. Hello fox. Naruto said loudly and, while Kyuubi woke up, managed to sit down on his personalized throne. Hello to you too, Naruto, the nine-tailed one yawned. What's the occasion? Just to chat, Uzumaki smiled. Remember, I told you that I was looking for a stash of people. The blonde asked. I remember, Biju's memory is very good, so I even remember telling you about my memory, the fox reminded him with narrowed eyes. Yeah, well, one of my companions turned out to be a Senju. And on top of that, he found out that I'm a forest elementalist too. The blonde shared the information and watched the fox's reaction. I thought Senju were extinct. Yeah, that's the news. The fox was surprised. And what did you find in the stash? Kyubi inquired. I personally got the money, a necklace that improves forest element, the sword of the first Hokage, a couple of forest element techniques that made me unconscious, and a scroll with the location of the masked temple. Naruto finished and looked at Kyubi cheerfully. A temple with masks. The fox was surprised. And whose is it? Kyubi continued to ask. I don't know yet, but I'll ask Zetsu to investigate this place. The scroll has the information he needs, the blonde explained with a smart look, and the fox smiled. Are you saying that you got into the subconscious because you passed out due to lack of chakra? The fox asked, and Naruto only shook his head. You know, Naruto, a shinobi shouldn't exhaust himself like that or it can be fatal, but it's not so bad for you because I'm sealed inside you, the fox explained, and Uzumaki smiled slyly. Do you care about me? The blonde asked with sly eyes, and the fox widened his eyes and raised his eyebrows high. No, you misunderstood, I just wanted to. Kyubi began, but Naruto interrupted him. Come on, you're not getting away with this. Thank you. Naruto smiled, and Kyubi wanted to say something, but the blonde snapped his fingers and disappeared like an exploding firework. Hey, thank you, too, the fox said into the void and rolled over onto his other side. Ooh, my head, why does it hurt? Uzumaki moaned, opening his eyes. What? Naruto shouted. The last thing he remembered was fainting in the middle of a clearing, but now he was in some dark and damp room. Naruto was stripped to his torso and hanging from chains. In some places they were covered with seals that blocked chakra. I can't move, said the blonde man to himself as he tried to move, but nothing worked. Hey, somebody, help, shouted the Jinchuriki, and a moment later he heard footsteps. The door opened and the light hit the blonde's eyes. Oh, you're awake now, Blondie. Grinned maliciously at the intruder. Take me down, shouted the blonde in an orderly tone. Should I give you your stolen stuff too? Ha ha ha. The man felt clearly superior and mocked the victim as best he could. You bastard. You'll be sorry. I'll kill you, shouted Naruto and twitched violently. Now you'll answer for your words, the enemy said with a grin and folded the seal of concentration. The chains were electrocuted and Uzumaki began to thrash in furious pain, screaming loudly. Nobu, do not overdo it, the man who had entered the room said in a commanding tone. The one called Nobu obeyed and interrupted his technique. I am Akira, and now you will tell us what we need, or Nobu will force it out of you. Trust me, he knows how to interrogate, the big man with the curly red hair said threateningly. How did I get here? Uzumaki spoke with his head down. Okay, I'll make a concession and answer your question. It was one of ours who knocked you out with a special technique, so you were unlucky. We decided not to kill you only because you had a lot of money and you were well dressed, so we decided that you could be ransomed. The leader finished his tirade and looked at the blonde's reaction in surprise. Ransom. Ha ha ha. Ransom for me. Ha ha. You guys are full of shit on that one. Uzumaki laughed, even though his situation was not the best according to Nobu and Akira. Nobu. Fry him up a little, the leader ordered, and a sadistic grin slid across his subordinate's face. Gladly. He folded the seal of concentration again, and the blonde man was electrocuted again. After 20 seconds, the torture stopped, and Uzumaki was breathing very heavily, sweat dripping down his forehead, and the heated circuits from the current burning his skin. Ha ha. Now I'll ask. Uzumaki began, slowly raising his head. How do you want to die? Shouted Uzumaki, and those present stared at the blood-red eyes with vertical pupil in fear. The fox's chakra made the suppression seals burn, and with a snarl, Uzumaki ripped all the chains off the hinges at once, and the enemies were thrown back against the door by a sudden burst of scarlet chakra. "Nobu, kill him!" Akira shouted with fear in his voice and dashed away. Nobu glanced at Akira running out, and when he turned, the last thing he saw was a huge sword. Naruto chopped Nobu's head off and kicked the door shut by the man in charge with his foot. Uzumaki walked out of the room and saw the opponents running out of the corridors. "Let's have some fun," the blonde shouted bloodthirstily and grabbed his sword. The katana strikes and various stabbing and slashing weapons came at him from all sides. Jinchuriki activated his Sharingan and now saw all the movements of his opponents. He dodged the katana and chopped diagonally with his sword, then blocked the axe's blow and made a slash at the enemy. As soon as the enemy began to fall, he intercepted his axe and put it into the head of the enemy. Then he dodges the enemy's careless blow and hits him in the solar plexus with the hilt of his sword, quickly regroups, and the enemy's blow hits his ally. Everything went by at a fast pace, Naruto crumbling his sword at the oncoming enemies and advancing down the corridor, with a bloody mess behind him. After 10 minutes of slaying enemies, Naruto reached Akira, who also rushed into the fray, but was immediately caught in a Sharingan illusion. "Who are you and where are my things?" Naruto asked in a gruff voice. He had a lot of cuts that oozed blood, but it was as if he didn't notice them. "We're from the Mika criminal organization, your things are in the chest in the secret room behind my back," the torch, Akira said, staring at one point, as if inanimate. "Who is the ringleader of the organization?" "His location?" Uzumaki asked coldly. "A certain person nicknamed Mentor. His whereabouts are unknown," the big man replied emotionlessly. "Who would know where he is?" "There's another base, the head of the base should know something about him. It's marked on the map next to your things." Naruto silently interrupted the technique in the man's life. After that, Uzumaki sealed his sword and he finally felt the pain from all the wounds. Jinchuriki ran his Biju's chakra through his body and began to heal himself with the Irionen technique. Uzumaki looked around the space and found a switch that opened a passage to a secret room. The room was small, so Uzumaki found the chest right away. He took all of his belongings and was surprised that the brigands didn't have anything else. After that he took a map showing the location of the base and then spoke. "Mentor. You are my mission now." Naruto promised himself that he would rid the world of the organization, Mika, and to do this it was necessary to destroy all their bases, as well as the head of the organization, so Uzumaki set off. The blonde calculated that it would take about 8 days to get to the Mika base by normal walking, and if running at the speed of a shinobi, it would take 5. Jinchuriki decided that he would go as a normal person so that he could train every day. Before heading to his destination, Uzumaki decided to still visit the nearest town and buy some throwing weapons since he couldn't find a weapon pouch in his chest. Paw of Naruto. Damn brigands. I wonder how they cut me off in the clearing. I thought I was out of chakra, but here's the surprise. Well, at least I have all my valuables with me, except for the pouch. One thing that bugs me is that the brigand who scratched me the most used an interesting technique. His sword was enveloped by chakra, it even moved in a very interesting way. In this crowd he accidentally hit one of the other swords with his weapon and it disintegrated as if it was made of oil. I'll have to ask Madara what it is later. End of Naruto's paw. Naruto reached the town and stayed there for a couple hours, buying everything he needed and then headed to Mika's base. The Uzumaki pondered a plan that would allow him to get through security so that the head of the base wouldn't slip away. While Naruto was thinking, it was already evening, and after darkened completely, but it did not stop the brave shinobi, and he continued on his way. The blonde walked all night and half of the day and only after that he decided to take a break to rest and gain strength for the future training. 2 hours later, the blonde stood in the clearing, rested and full of energy. He created 4 clones and sent them out in different directions to warn him in case of danger. Paw of Naruto. So, the forest techniques are over, and now I don't know what to learn. XO. What is there to do? Maybe I can remember something from Madara's advice. Or maybe I can improve on what I've already learned. That's right. Madara said I could improve my Rasengan. Why didn't I realize that? Rasengan is a technique based on form, and if you make the ball bigger, the technique should be more powerful, and if you do it with 2 hands, it can be very useful. You just have to give it a try. End of Naruto's POV. Naruto was glad that he could now continue practicing, and began to improve his Rasengan. Uzumaki created a large number of clones and ordered them to learn how to create Rasengan with different hands and at different times, and he himself walked away from the clearing and began to meditate. His meditation was sometimes disrupted by the explosions in the clearing, but the blonde learned to ignore all the noise and continued his meditation. After 3 hours, Uzumaki interrupted his meditation and dispelled the clones, and staggered out of sheer fatigue. Okay, we have to stop this. If you think about it, clones transfer experience and fatigue when they're doing something, but if they do nothing, or if they meditate, or if they sleep, then by convention they should transfer fresh strength to me. Naruto was happy that he had come up with this brilliant idea and immediately created 10 copies of himself and started putting them to sleep. It took another hour to get the clones to sleep, but some of the clones couldn't sleep. Blondine thought for a long time about what to do about it, so he thought of putting them into an illusion and ordering them to sleep. All the clones fell asleep, and the Jinchuriki went to the clearing to see how the improvement in technique was going. Everything that Naruto had planned the clones had accomplished, so Uzumaki could easily create a large Rasengan, and even with 2 hands, well, the power of a large Rasengan was clearly superior to a normal one. Naruto was happy that everything went as it should, and the thought of using elemental chakra instead of regular chakra came to his mind, and he decided to try it with wind. Uzumaki created shadow copies again and began to create a new technique. It took the blonde 2 hours to create a Rasengan based on wind chakra. The ball itself was white and spinning at an incredible speed. It also had small blades of wind coming off of it, and it looked like a round shuriken. Naruto sat down on his heel and began to breathe rapidly. He had used up enough chakra for that, and moreover, he was creating clones. And then the blonde remembered about the sleeping copies and immediately dispelled them. As soon as the shadow clones disappeared, the original had his vigor and restored chakra. Uzumaki smiled and got to his feet. Not thinking long, he set off towards the base, considering the training completed. 5 days earlier, in Konoha, there was a knock on the door at the Hokage's residence. Come in, the 5th Hokage answered without taking her eyes off the papers. Senju Hashirama's crystallized chakra was visible on her chest, and it was green in color. Hello Hokage-sama, team number 7 has arrived for their assignment, Hitaki Kakashi reported, followed by Haruno Sakura, Uchiha Sasuke and Sai. So, let's see what we have for Team 7. Tsunade was talking to herself while rummaging through the papers. Today, you're in luck. A small gang of bandits in the north of the country, approximate location, near the city of Yumiko, your task, to find and destroy, and also to check the information that these bandits are involved in the organization. Mika read out the task 5th and handed the scroll to Kakashi. How much time is given to complete the task? Sai asked, drawing everyone's attention to himself. A week, I think, is enough, but the deadline is a week and a half, the Hokage replied, pondering. What is the rank of this mission? The Uchiha asked, adjusting the katana Obito had given him. Rank A, everyone, don't interfere with my work. Dismissed, said the Hokage in an imperious tone. Hi. The ninja replied and hurried away. So, guys, meet at the gate in 40 minutes, don't be late, warned the Junin and disappeared in the spatial technique. After exactly 40 minutes, Team 7 gathered at the gate. Everyone was in formation, so the shinobi set off without delay. Kakashi-sensei, why are you reading this erotic book either at home or on a mission? Haruno asked in a grin. Because, Sakura, Rin said that if she sees this book in my hands, she will kill me, and that she has a heavy punch, Hitaki said without taking his eyes off the book, and the co-commanders only smiled. I understand there's a Chunin exam in a month, will you all be participating? Kakashi continued the conversation. All of us, the Uchiha answered for all of them and moved to another tree. Yeah, we'll pass this time for sure. Haruno said confidently, and Sai nodded in agreement. The shinobi's conversation came to an end, and they silently went on their way. 4 days passed, and Team 7 was already in the city of Yumiko. everyone scattered to look for more information, and Hitaki went to the customer to clarify the details of the assignment. Half a day later, everyone met up and began to recount what they had learned. Luckier of course was Sasuke, who was casting illusions and questioning suspicious types. So, a little to the south of here is the road where the caravans travel, and that's where the bandits were last seen, said the captain of the team, with one eye open. Some people were buying stolen goods from one man, name and everything else is unknown, only known that he missed today's meeting, though he never missed before. Sai, in his turn, informed everyone. I got nothing. Sakura lowered her head, realizing that she wasn't good at gathering information and it was worth paying attention to. I questioned a few people under the illusion and this is what came out of it. The person Sai was referring to is named Akira. These brigands are indeed connected to the Mika crime group. Their base should be northeast of the caravan road. The base itself is in a cave near a small body of water, filled in all the blanks Uchiha, and everyone stared at his sensei. Well done Sasuke, now we are going to this base. I advise you to go back to the hotel and pack your things. We are not coming back here, said Kakashi, and everyone went to the hotel. After the team reached the road, then according to Uchiha's instructions they started looking for the cave, which they found within 2 hours. Okay, once we enter, we have to be extremely careful. Strange, there should be at least a hint of security. We eliminate people as quietly as possible without attracting attention. Also, Sakura, don't use your taijutsu in the cave, or you'll bury us all, Kakashi finished, and Sakura nodded and unsealed her red-pink mace from the scroll, which instead of a spiked ball had rectangular, sharpened spikes tightly attached to the hilt. Team 7, barely audibly treading on the ground, made their way to the entrance and very quietly slipped inside. As soon as they entered, they immediately felt the cold and damp air of the cave. A torch was burning dimly nearby, it made Hitaki anxious. Not a single sound was heard by the 7th team, so they visibly tensed up, but still continued on their way. Here a door appeared before them, and the Junin gave a wave to Sai, who drew a mouse and made it squeeze under the door. As soon as the mouse slipped through, Sai closed his eyes, but not 5 seconds later he opened his eyes in horror. There. Safe, Sai muttered with an unclear intonation, and Kakashi opened the door and froze in shock. Sasuke and Sakura were curious too, and they looked over their sensei's shoulder. They're all. Sakura began in a trembling voice. Dead, Sai finished, and Kakashi and the Uchiha remained silent. What happened here? Sakura asked the question. Guys, let's split up and explore this place. Me with Sakura and Sai and Sasuke. Hitaki gave orders, and he and Sakura went straight down the hallway, while Sai and Sasuke went the other way. The second pair reached the room that the mess had started from and went inside. Looks like someone was held here. Sasuke said and sat down to examine the chains. Yeah, it happened about 4 hours ago, you can tell by the bodies, Sai confirmed, looking at the dead bodies. These pins on the chains are very long and they were hammered into the wall. What kind of strength would it take to tear them out of the wall? The Uchiha was greatly surprised and activated his Sharingan. Strongly powerful chakra. Sasuke gave out after a quick look and turned to see Sai standing up. They were killed mostly with swords, some with their own weapons. The bodies are unaffected by the techniques, Sai informed. Just as he finished, a scream from Sakura was heard. Hurry up! Shouted Sasuke, and they rushed to the source of the sound. 20 seconds later, they jumped out to Kakashi and Sakura and were surprised to see that Sakura was treating one of the shredded people. What happened here? Kakashi asked and crouched down next to the dying man, who was starting to spit up blood but was still conscious. Ahem. Ah. Demon. Ah. Ah. The unfortunate man uttered and died, rolling his eyes, and those present didn't know what to do. Demon. Kakashi-sensei, we found that the murders started from the chamber. It looks like someone with incredible chakra ripped off the chains and killed everyone with a sword, Sasuke reported the observations. I see, we found a secret room, but it's empty, we only found a pouch full of weapons, Kakashi said and stood up. What are we going to do now? Haruno asked, squeamishly stepping over the corpse. We'll pile up the corpses and burn them, then go back to Konoha, there's nothing to do here. I'll write everything in detail in the report later, the copying ninja said, and the whole team began to pile up the corpses. One of them had a map with a marked area. Hitaki took him for a messenger, and the marked place was another base. Soon all the corpses were stacked in a large pile, and Kakashi and Sasuke began to fold the identical seals. Kaden. Large fireball, the shinobi said at the same time and blew out 2 large fireballs that began to sizzle the bodies. 5 minutes later, they repeated the technique and all the bodies burned and the team exited the cave. Now to Konoha. Hitaki spoke and the 4 shinobi took off. In 9 days. Naruto was approaching Mika's hideout. Half an hour ago he had checked the exact location on the map and now he was moving decisively and with a plan. He had stopped a couple of times to practice and now his handling of the big sword had improved quite a bit. He was also using it with the wakizashi and was becoming quite the killing machine, at least he was crushing tree clones with flying colors. Also the progress with Rasengan was good, he was creating techniques faster than a second even with both hands and also solidified the techniques learned on the forest elemental. Nothing would stop the fox demon Jinchuriki now. Mentor, I'm getting closer and closer. Naruto smiled bloodthirstily as he approached the cave. Stop. Who's coming? A voice asked gruffly, but Naruto saw no one. I'm from Akira, I'm told to pass on information about the prisoner, Uzumaki answered loudly, and then the bushes moved. 3 people came out of there and asked to follow them. The blond man followed without further ado, and now they were already at the entrance. The passage to the cave was closed.